Mark, are we on the record? Okay, all right, great. All right, today is November 1st, 2024. My name is Kristen Brown. I'm hearing officer on two exclusions, actually three exclusion hearings this morning. City of Englewood, Colorado. Can I have entries of appearance, please?
Nathan Cash with the city, registration 59367.
And Jamie Hubbard on behalf of Regan Benson, who appears with me at council table.
All right, thank you. All right, so preliminarily, this matter is governed by section 11.4-3 of the Englewood Municipal Code regarding violation of rules and regulations, ejection and exclusion from city property. The city, pursuant to paragraph 4C, has the burden to prove by preponderance of the evidence that the person issued the exclusion, in this case, Ms. Regan, committed a specific rule violation and that the issuance, duration, and conditions of the exclusion are lawful. The notice of ejection exclusion was issued to Regan Benson, date of alleged incident, October 7th of 2024. The date of the exclusion, issuance of the exclusion was October 9th of 2024. Ms. Regan appealed that exclusion. Notice of the appeal hearing, setting the hearing for today's date, 10 a.m., council chambers at the city complex, was issued on October 28th. Are the parties ready to proceed?
As a preliminary matter, hearing officer, we did submit last week a request for a closed hearing. I can provide you with a copy of that if you did not receive that.
I do have that. And I know, Ms. Hubbard, you'll have a verbal response. Did you want to make a record? I have the request and I have read that over.
In addition to the request, the only additional note is there is currently an administrative order in effect covering this room, prohibiting filming without the prior consent of people who are being recorded. So I just ask, even if this order is denied, that you instruct that there should be no filming during this hearing.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Hubbard, before I turn it over to you, Mr. Cash, is there anything you'd like to elaborate on other than what's stated in the motion?
No, hearing officer.
Okay, all right. All right, Ms. Hubbard.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's easier for me to speak from a podium.
Yeah, that's fine, not a problem.
I know more. How do I turn this on? Push to talk. Oh, that's what that says, push to talk. Your Honor, this is a public meeting. It's been noticed as a public meeting. I believe that there is no grounds to close the meeting. As you will soon come to realize if you have not already, what is at issue here today is First Amendment issues. Everything that happened in this case happened during a public meeting. The main evidence of the event is you're going to see was my client speaking at a city council meeting in this very room. And that meeting was live streamed. It is publicly available. There is nothing that will happen at this hearing today that has any indicia of privacy that the hearing officer needs to be cognizant of. The only two witnesses who are anticipated to testify are a police officer who walks around every single day wearing a body cam, and who there is an established First Amendment right to record when you have a public interaction with a police officer. The second witness is the city attorney, who sits at every single meeting in this chair over here where her name placard is. She is a public official. She is on the record all of the time. The Colorado Open Meetings laws require that much of what she do, except when it's subject to attorney-client privilege, be made available to the public, either through an affirmative public disclosure or through a response to CORA or other sort of open records requests. Closing this meeting and honestly prohibiting recording is a prior restraint of speech. My client is the modern equivalent of a journalist, right? We don't live in the 1950s anymore where the only kind of journalism appears on newspapers. There are people who have blogs, who have YouTube channels, who have live streams. They are, in 2024 parlance, journalists. She records her interactions with city officials. She live streams them. She makes them available to the public. That is an important public function. This is a hearing where the city, the government, is trying to stop her from being able to publish her efforts to petition the government and to hold the government accountable. What is at issue here is my client goes to nearly every city council meeting. She goes to work sessions, or whatever they call them. She goes to library board meetings. She makes her voice heard, and she advocates on behalf of the homeless population in the city of Englewood, who does not have a voice without people like my client. And that's what her mission is. She has a nonprofit that helps and provides direct street outreach to homeless clients. And part of her mission is to advocate on their behalf and be their voice when they cannot do it for themselves. If the hearing officer finds in favor of the city, she will be barred from her mission for at least the next 45 days. So the First Amendment is directly at issue in this hearing. And whenever there is a First Amendment issue, the presumption of openness needs to apply. The city's motion says neither party will be prejudiced. First off, I disagree inherently with that. Ms. Benson is prejudiced if she cannot have public view of this hearing. But more importantly, the only interests here are not the two parties. There is a public interest in this hearing. There is a public interest whenever the First Amendment is implicated by something. Case after case after case that comes out of the federal court says, whenever you're talking about a First Amendment restraint, public interest wins. And so here we are, we're talking about the First Amendment. In this hearing, we have the city, the government trying to silence my client from being able to express herself, which is a prior restraint on her First Amendment rights. And now they want you to not even let people see the process being used to take away her First Amendment rights. I've reviewed all the authority cited by the government in their motion. Frankly, it doesn't apply. They cite the First Amendment as authority for why you get to close this hearing. That is nonsensical. They cite the Fourth Amendment for why you get to close this hearing. Also nonsensical. The authorities they cite do not establish that this meeting should be closed. And given the important issues that we intend to address at this hearing, the meeting needs to be open.
Thank you. Mr. Cash, any response?
Other than reiterating what's in our motion, I would again just like to say that we prohibit filming at the very least pursuant to the administrative order that is in effect if this motion is denied.
Thank you. All right, I've reviewed the motion myself, and having worked in the field of municipal law for almost 35 years, I am highly aware of the importance of public hearings and meetings, et cetera, and the basis for that, those policies. And I'm going to deny the city's request to close the hearing. I will, pursuant to the administrative order, and I will note on the record that this hearing is being recorded by the city independently. I'm not hitting on and off buttons. There's an IT specialist who is recording the hearing. And as Ms. Hubbard has indicated, or alluded to, these records and this recording of this hearing in full will be available to anyone who requests it pursuant to the Colorado Open Records Act. Prohibiting someone from recording the hearing, either filming the recording or the hearing or just doing an audio recording, I disagree, is a restraint on speech. And because a full unredacted recording of this hearing will be available to anyone who requests it. So no one is to record the hearing, either filming the hearing or just audio. And in the event anyone is engaging in that kind of activity, I'm going to ask them to leave. All right. Any other things I need to address? I'm happy to address sequestration request if anyone has one.
Not from the city.
Okay, all right. Does the city want to make an opening statement?
We're okay for the interest of time before go
Okay,
opening
all right,
statement, reserve
all
for
right.
closing.
All right, perfect. Your first witness?
Yes, I'd like to call City Attorney Tamara Niles.
Your Honor, we would request sequestration of witnesses. I believe the officer who's going to testify is in the courtroom.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to have you raise your right hand. Do hereby swear or affirm under penalty of perjury testimony you're about to give will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
All right, thank you. All right, your witness?
Good morning, Ms. Niles. Can you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Tamara Niles, Niles.
And are you employed?
I am.
And who is your employer?
I'm the city attorney for the city of Englewood
And how long have you been working with the City of Englewood?
since 2001.
Okay. And,
2021,
and what is your role there?
city attorney.
Okay, you said that. Can you explain just some of what your job duties are?
Certainly. As we discussed earlier, I attend city council meetings, I draft legislation, provide legal opinions, legal analysis to city council, monitor statutory revisions, and ensure city code is in compliance.
Oh, thank you.
And a list of other things.
Of course. Were you working on the evening of Monday, October 7, 2024?
I was.
And where were you working?
Right here in this room, well, upstairs on the Civic Center, third floor is my office. And then in the evening, I was here at my spot as indicated on my name placard.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to draw your attention to approximately 7:10 p.m. on that day. Did you notice anyone in particular? Or
No, it was a city council meeting, so generally I'm trying to respond to issues that have come up regarding the meeting. So generally I'm sitting at my spot with my laptop, not really paying attention to the audience.
And do you remember anything in particular or anyone who was called to make a public comment in particular? Does anything stand out to you?
Yes, so that generally we have an hour of study session where we study various issues from 6 to 7. Then shortly after 7 o'clock, generally the mayor starts public comment. And pursuant to municipal code, the mayor calls people up, asks them to give their full name and either their address or cross streets if they're in the city of Englewood, or their city of residence if they don't reside within Englewood. And we did have a speaker, Ms. Benson, who's sitting at the table, that refused to comply with that provision of municipal code.
And hearing officer, I'd like the record to reflect that the witness has identified the appealing party, Ms. Regan Benson. But moving on a little bit more to speak about that public meeting. So you said Ms. Benson, was she called to make a public comment at the city council meeting?
She was. So there's a sign-up process. If anyone wants to speak during public comment, city council policies allow 3 minutes per person, 90 minutes total for public comment. And so the city clerks handle the sign-up process at the beginning of the meeting, and then they hand the sign-up to the mayor. And so then the mayor was going through the list and called Ms. Benson to speak.
Okay. And then what happened after the mayor called her to speak?
Ms. Benson refused to comply with the provision regarding municipal code. I believe that required her to give her address, cross streets, or city of residence.
And you said, is this providing this address information required for all public speakers?
It is.
And then after she refused to give her information, what happened next?
She began to speak, and the mayor stopped and asked her to comply with that provision of municipal code. She failed to do so. Then the mayor pro tem turned on his light and began to speak. And they were interrupted, the mayor and the mayor pro tem, and Ms. Benson continued to speak, even though at that point she was not recognized to do so because the mayor and the mayor pro tem had the floor.
Okay, so she was not recognized to speak, but was she authorized to speak at this time?
Under municipal code, no one is authorized to speak if they don't give their full name and their address information. So no, she was not authorized to speak by city law.
Okay, and then in response to this, did Mayor Sierra do anything?
Mayor Sierra continued to request compliance. Ms. Benson continued to speak. So the mayor announced that city council would be taking a recess.
And approximately how long did this recess last?
Approximately 8 minutes, I believe. I didn't go back through and watch the video again, just from my knowledge when I was at the meeting.
All right, thank you. And do you have knowledge of what Ms. Benson did during the recess?
She continued to stand at the podium where you are and speak that entire time while city council was in recess. The majority of city council got up and left the dais. They normally sit up here where I'm sitting today. I believe 2 city council members may have stayed in their seats, but the city council was in recess and the rest of them left the room physically.
All right, and once the meeting resumed, was Ms. Benson still speaking?
She was still at the dais. I was not paying attention to what Ms. Benson was doing or what she was saying, but I do recall during that time that she was at the dais and continued to say words, but I can't tell you what they were because I wasn't listening.
Okay, thank you. So once the meeting did resume, did Mayor Sierra give any orders or instructions to Ms. Benson?
Yes, he did request that she leave. He is a city official that is authorized to maintain order in city council chambers pursuant to CRS 18-9-110. So he asked her to leave the room, and she stated that she would not do so. And so the mayor stated, well, for the record, please note that Ms. Benson has refused to leave. She did, however, stop speaking at the dais and went to the back of the room and stayed there for some time. I don't know how long. She continued to stay in the room.
And does Mayor Sierra, does he have the legal authority to ask individuals to leave city council meetings?
Yes, under state law, it's Colorado Revised Statutes 18-9-110. He is the city official who maintains order during city council meetings. He also is a specific designee of the city manager, who's the chief administrative official for the city of Englewood, and he is a designee to maintain order during city council meetings.
Okay, and you may have touched on it a little bit, but once he did order Ms. Benson to leave, she remained in the room. Is that correct?
She did. And in fact, she stated that she would not leave. And then the mayor stated, for the record, please note, Ms. Benson has refused to leave.
All right, thank you. And does the city of Englewood, to your knowledge, routinely record its city council meetings?
Yes.
And do these recordings typically include the public comment periods?
Yes. And the city both live streams the meetings and then saves a copy of the video on its website for city council meetings. And it's on the same page as the city council agenda. There's a link to the video.
All right, and so was the city council meeting that took place on October 7th, 2024 recorded?
To my knowledge, yes, but that would be in the normal course and scope of our operations, but I have not looked for it or watched it.
But, in the course of, maintaining records, the city does typically record its city council meetings, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up, just knowing for the court, a video that the city posted to their YouTube channel of the public comment period from the October 7th, 2024 meeting. Mark, is there anything else I need to do to get it to show up on the screen? I have it pulled up on the computer here. All right, thank you. I'm going to play just a few moments of this video. Ms. Niles.
This is an opportunity to address City Council. Excuse me. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue, and please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Englewood residents must provide address or cross streets. Non-Englewood residents must just provide the name of their city. If you have addressed council in the last 90 days, you would be moved to the bottom of the.
Okay, and I'll stop right there for a moment. Ms. Niles, do you recognize what's going on here, or can you give us a little detail?
Yes,
Yep.
so that's Mayor Othoniel Sierra, who is the chair of the city council meetings and the one designated to maintain order during city council. He's sitting where our hearing officer is sitting today, and at public comment period, he reads this language, which is also printed on the city council agenda. And then he begins calling people up to speak where you are standing during public comment.
All right, and to your knowledge, from what you've seen, this fairly inaccurately represents the city's footage of the public comment period that took place on October 7th, 2024?
Yes.
Okay, hearing officer, at this time, I would like to request that this video is entered into evidence as Exhibit 1, as its credibility has been established and pursuant to the rules, it is probative and relevant to the matter at issue.
No objection.
Noting no objection, it will be admitted. Is it going to be marked as Exhibit 1?
Yes, hearing officer.
All right, thank you.
And then, okay, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit on this footage to 534.
Can you give me the markers that you're skipping to, so I can note that in the event I need to review?
Yes, of course. I just skipped to 5 minutes and 34 seconds.
Thank you.
And I can provide you a paper copy of my timestamps as well after.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just going to play some of this video, Ms. Niles.
Benson, with no topic given. Good evening, Regan. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Good evening, council. I'm not giving you my cross streets or my address, but it is good to see you again. I want to talk
Regan,
to you
actually,
about
can you
all
say-
those things that
Regan,
we've talked about in
Regan,
the
can you please
past
hold?
as far as the
Regan,
criminalization
please
that
stop.
you've.
Regan.
Excuse me.
No, Regan,
This
we
is
asked
my
you for-
time.
Regan, we asked you for
Excuse
your
me.
address.
This is my time.
Regan, if you can please
And I'm going
stop.
to make public comment, and I'm going to do it for 3 minutes uninterrupted. And if you interrupt me, I'm going to talk louder.
Regan,
So,
no,
back
Regan,
to
I
my
asked you just
public
to state the city that you reside in.
standing up here.
Mayor, the
and
speaker
talking
is
to you
interrupting the meeting.
about the criminalization that you started down in the library
Call of order.
on me.
Regan, call
Guess
of order.
what?
Regan, please stay. Regan, can you please stop speaking?
Mayor, can I ask that we take a break?
I agree. So city council is going to take a break while the city attorney and the police department figure out a way to control the situation. Thank you.
And I'd like to invite anyone that would like to come to that hearing on the record here tonight. It is public comment time. I don't know why the city council is getting up and leaving the dais. That's interesting, but that's okay. I'll keep talking to the members that are staying. You've heard me talk before about this bogus criminalization that occurred downstairs in the library, where 3 librarians by the name of Bethany, Harry, and Karina lied.
Okay, and to your knowledge, Ms. Niles, is this the incident that you've been testifying with regard to, or does this accurately reflect?
Yes, this accurately reflected the public comment period about which I've testified.
And when the city council, in large stood up to leave, this is, as you testified, when they are going to recess?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
To Jean Holder, the prom of Englewood, who then continued to coach them in their lives. The DA dismissed the case, where the city tried to have me criminally charged for harassment. You know why that case got dismissed? Because it was all a lie. I told
Okay, and at this time, I'd like to note that the sound was muted in the video, and I will be skipping ahead to 10 minutes and 55 seconds from 8 minutes and 15 seconds, which is, as you will be able to see, when City Council returns.
Can you give me this marker again? You said 10 minutes.
Yes, I skipped where I stopped. Was about 8 minutes. I actually don't have there, and I apologize. But I'm skipping to 10 minutes and 55 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Benson, your time is up.
Is my time up?
Your time is up. Ms. Benson, I'm asking you to leave. Ms. Benson, Ms. Benson, you have violated council policy.
You coward!
I'm asking you to leave.
I'm not leaving.
For the record, let it be known that I have asked Ms. Benson to leave the council meeting. And we will now move on to the next speaker.
Okay, and just pausing there, Ms. Niles, this is accurate to what you testified to, that the mayor asked Ms. Benson to leave and she refused, is that correct?
Yes, after she stated, I believe, I'm not leaving, then she went to the back of the room and stayed. I didn't time it, but I would estimate over 10 minutes. But stood back at the room quietly. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Niles. And I'd just like to note that I'm stopping the video at 11 minutes and 18 seconds and closing it out and moving on, Your Honor. All right, so I'd like to move on a little bit to talk about the exclusion notice that was issued to Ms. Benson itself. Did you prepare the notice of exclusion?
I did, except I did not provide date of birth or address. I didn't have that information.
Okay, and are you aware with who did provide that information?
Generally, the police department would have that information. I mean, that's not something I would have access to. So I would assume, I prepared it without that information, and I forwarded it to Englewood Police Department.
Okay, thank you. And have you reviewed the notice of exclusion?
I have.
Okay. And at this time, I'd like to show hearing officer that I am providing a copy of the notice of exclusion to opposing counsel, and I'll also approach to hand a copy to Ms. Niles. Hi, please take a moment just to look over what the papers that I handed you, Ms. Niles. And do you recognize this?
Yes.
Can you just tell me what it is?
Yes, this is a notice of ejection and exclusion form that my office has created the form for city staff to issue and serve to people that have violated our standards of behavior, our administrative orders, or violated any provision of municipal code or state law or other applicable law on city property.
All right, thank you. And does this fairly and accurately represent the notice of exclusion that you drafted for Ms. Benson?
Yes, except when I drafted it, it did not have the address, date of birth,
Yep.
Service information, or the acknowledgement of receipt.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, hearing officer, I'd like to request that the document you have before you, and I can provide you a copy, is entered into evidence as Exhibit 2.
Thank you. Any objection from Ms. Hubbard?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Exhibit 2 will be admitted.
Sure.
Thank you. Because you don't have exhibit stickers, I'm just going to make a note up at the top, Exhibit 2.
Okay,
All right,
thank
just
you.
so it's clear for the record. Thank you.
All right, returning to the exclusion notice, Ms. Niles, what type of violation is identified by the notice of exclusion?
Two tier 1 violations. We have two types of violations based on severity, and the severity then supports a potentially longer period of exclusion. So two tier 1 violations, one for disruptive activity behavior interfering with normal use operation by another, And then other violations of CRS 18-9-110 during city council meetings. And that statute in particular provides the person designated or with authority to maintain order to request someone to leave, and that failure to leave is then a violation of statute. That same statute in a separate provision, subsection 4 particularly, prohibits anyone from impeding, disrupting, or hindering normal proceedings of a legislative meeting.
Okay, thank you. And turning to the first Tier 1 violation, the disruptive behavior violation, what was this violation based on?
It was based on refusing to comply with municipal code to provide the address information. Then when no longer recognized to speak during the meeting, continuing to speak, then requiring city council to take a recess due to the disruption so that the disruption could be addressed and resolved.
Okay, thank you. And you testified that you are aware of the city council or the city's exclusion process in general, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What is the process based on?
What do you mean?
Or let me rephrase. Is the process based on the city's standards of behavior?
Yes, that is one part of it. We do have standards of behavior. Then each facility has their own rules, such as the library has rules. We have parks rules. City council has its own rules as established in its city council policies. So it could based on that. It could be based on specific rules for a specific location as well.
Okay, thank you. But are you aware of and have you reviewed the standards of behavior policy?
I have.
Okay. Let the record reflect, I am handing a copy of the standards of behavior policy to opposing counsel, one to Ms. Niles, and then we'll also hand one to the hearing officer.
Thank you.
All right, can you take a moment, Ms. Niles, and review the document that I handed you? And do you recognize this?
Yes, my office drafted it.
Okay, what is it?
This is a poster that we've created and that we've posted in city facilities and then our designated posting location is required by state law that lists behavior that is prohibited or unacceptable within the city of Englewood in our facilities and our various locations. And it lets people know that if you violate those standards, then you could be subject to ejection, which is immediate for 24 hours, or exclusion, which after an appeal period of 4 days would go into effect for a period of time based on the severity of the violation and a number of prior offenses.
All right, thank you. And hearing officer, at this time, I'd like to request the document you have before you is entered into evidence as Exhibit 3.
Ms. Hubbard, any objection?
Nope.
All right, Exhibit 3 is amended.
And then moving back to the standards of behavior, Ms. Niles, does it include a purpose statement?
It does.
What is the purpose of the standards of behavior policy?
The purpose is to allow the city to conduct business and serve customers and community members and provide an atmosphere of welcome, courtesy, respect, and business. They protect the rights and safety of visitors, employees, and volunteers, and prohibit unreasonable interference with lawful use of city facilities.
And does the standards of behavior policy indicate where it applies?
All indoor and outdoor areas and structures owned, controlled, or operated by the city.
And would this include the city council chambers?
It would.
Okay. And then the standards of behavior, you mentioned they indicate 2 tiers of behavior that violate the policy, correct?
Yes.
What are some examples or types of behaviors that are included in Tier 1?
A Tier 1 includes disruptive activity or behavior, littering, impeding the use of access areas. Actually, the next one, creating a risk to public health or safety, including through bodily fluids, feces, and pests, we actually amended because during public comment, someone commented that how it was previously written could unduly affect people that are unhoused. So we revised that one accordingly in response to public comment. leaving personal property unattended, not wearing clothes.
Okay, thank you. I'll cut you off there. I appreciate it. Thank you. And can you just list just a few examples of what types of behaviors are included in Tier 2?
Tier 2 are generally higher level crimes, such as possessing drugs, alcohol consumption within our facilities,
Okay, thank you.
defecating on our walkways, which we have had people do in the interior of our civic center.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate it. I'll cut you off there. And you may have mentioned it, but just for clarification, is disruptive behavior specifically included in Tier 1 of the city standards of behavior policy?
It is.
Okay. And is violating an applicable criminal law prohibited anywhere in the standards of behavior?
I believe it is. Yes, it's actually a Tier 2 violation.
Okay, thank you. And do the standards of behavior, include a process or specify a process for handling violations?
Yes, at the very bottom, it states that it may include a verbal warning to continue, not required, but it could include ejection, which is that immediate removal for 24 hours, and then an exclusion, which is 45 days and up based on the tier level and the number of prior offenses.
Okay, and is this the same exclusion notice that was issued to Ms. Benson?
Yes. So these are two documents that go hand in hand that my office created. So first the standards of behavior, and then the exclusion notice is to effectuate the rules in the standards of behavior.
All right,
And it's also reflected in municipal code as well.
Okay, thank you. And turning back just very quickly to the exclusion notice itself, how long was Ms. Benson excluded for?
I wrote it for a 45-day exclusion based on a Tier 1 violation. While we considered whether to allow for a Tier 2 violation for the violation of law, or specifically violation of CRS 18-9-110. We didn't show that Ms. Benson had a prior Tier 1 violation, and we wanted to minimize the impact on her ability to attend public comment in person. So we wrote it just for a Tier 1 violation for 45 days only.
Okay,
And that's only for in-person city council. It doesn't prohibit attendance of city council meetings on video, remotely, or providing public comment on video. So there's still the ability to give public comment, just not in person.
Okay, so it only physically restricts her from this room, the city council chambers?
Yes, that's
For
right.
45 days, okay, thank you. And is there a reason why the city council chambers were specified as where Ms. Benson is excluded from?
Because that's the specific location where the violation occurred.
Okay,
So it wouldn't prohibit any other city locations such as the library or the hub up on the 3rd floor.
all right, thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. And I want to make sure that I get a flash drive before I head out of Exhibit 1. Okay. All right. All right, Ms. Hubbard, you're a witness.
Good, are we still in morning? Morning, Ms. Niles? As city attorney, who's your client?
The city of Englewood.
Okay. Who does your attorney-client privilege apply to? What human beings? Obviously, it can't apply to a city.
Yes, that's the subject of many a CLE that I have attended when you're a municipal attorney. So the city is an ambiguous or amorphous entity that can only be represented by various people. So generally, city employees, city elected and appointed officials can all be subject to the attorney-client privilege because I'm giving them legal advice in their capacity as representing the city.
Okay, so I'm trying, I don't do a ton of municipal work, so I apologize if you think some of these questions are a little ignorant. They are, frankly. What conversations that you have with people do you consider attorney-client privilege? I'm trying to avoid, by my questioning, stepping on things that are attorney-client privilege. So if you could help me understand that.
Generally, any conversation regarding city business for any employee or elected appointed official for the city when they're acting in the course and scope of their, I was going to say employment, but Generally, if they're asking for legal information to assist them in their duties for the city, then I consider that attorney-client privilege.
Okay. So certainly everyone on city council, if they're asking your advice as a lawyer.
Yes.
Okay. That's helpful. Appreciate that. And I believe you testified that your role during city council meetings is to ensure procedures are followed. Is that one of them?
Generally, the mayor, as chair of the meeting, has that legal responsibility. However, if I see something that generally doesn't comply, I may or may not bring it up to the mayor depending on the severity of the issue. But it's the mayor's role to do that.
Okay. And then if someone on city council has a question, a legal question, they may turn to you for advice.
Yes.
I want to better understand this chief administrative officer or person charged with ensuing order. Are you familiar with that term from the statute?
Yes.
Who does the city of Englewood consider the chief administrative officer?
The city manager is the administrative officer for the entire city, all facilities, all employees, except for myself and the municipal court judge.
Can you say that last part again? I'm sorry.
Sure. He oversees every employee for the city of Englewood and every facility. Every employee except for myself, because I'm directly appointed by city council, and the municipal court judge because he's directly elected.
Okay. So that's kind of the city of Englewood's branches of government?
Yes.
Gotcha. And then I believe you testified that the chief administrative officer, so Sean Lewis, city manager, then delegates the role of kind of presiding officer to different people at different times.
Yes, I believe the statute refers to the chief administrative officer or a designee. And so he designates people to serve in that capacity.
Okay. During daily operations of the city, who does he designate?
Well, currently he's the only person. He hasn't formally designated other people except for the mayor during city council meetings. But I anticipate by the end of today that he will have a list of people that he has designated.
Okay. So you mentioned except for the mayor during city council meetings. Tell us more about that.
So he has designated the mayor in writing to be the designee to maintain order during city council meetings.
When did that occur? Do you recall whether it was
Approximately 90 days ago.
okay?
He formalized it. It has been in practice. In practice, the mayor during city council meetings and every board chair during board meetings, because that's the definition of our mayor, is to run the meetings. And so he formalized it in writing via an email approximately 90 days ago.
Okay. And where is that published?
It's an open record. It's not published, but it is an open record, an email between the city manager and the mayor.
Okay. So he designated the mayor, the chief administrative officer for purposes of city council meetings by email.
Yes.
And that was an email that Sean Lewis sent to the mayor.
Yes. And prior to that, it was informal. Informal by the city manager, but within municipal code and charter, it describes the mayor's duties.
Okay. And if someone wants a copy of that email, they have to do a core request to the city to get it.
Yes.
And they would need to know what to ask for and to file that core request.
Yes.
It is not publicly posted anywhere.
No, it's not posted anywhere.
All right. You mentioned, I want to change topics a little bit and talk about the conduct standards. You mentioned that your office drafted those.
Yes.
And that one of your jobs as city attorney is to ensure that your codes are complying with state laws, with constitutional issues, stuff like that.
Yes.
So you have reviewed the conduct standards to ensure that they are narrowly tailored to avoid infringing on the First Amendment.
Actually, I don't know that it was me in particular. Attorneys in my office, and we also use outside counsel to confirm, especially constitutional issues. We regularly retain outside counsel that, for example, is a First Amendment expert.
Okay. So for example, one of them relates to obscene, profane, lewd, threatening. Do you see that? It's a tier 2 violation about halfway down the column.
Yes.
And that is caveated by the final phrase, right? So you can, obscenity is prohibited only to the extent there's reasonable grounds to know it would tend to provoke or promote a fight, right?
Yes, and I believe that mirrors state law, that's a criminal violation regarding
Right.
that.
And that mirrors and derives from the First Amendment, right? That is intended to embody the fighting words exception to the First Amendment, right?
I can't tell you what the intent was behind the state legislature drafting that statute.
Okay. But you understand that the standards of behavior, as well as any other city code, is subject to and needs to comply with constitutional standards.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I want to try to do a little bit of nuts and bolts stuff again, and apologies for not being super familiar with municipal proceedings. I want to talk about the public comment time at Englewood City Council meetings. Public comment, it sounds like that's a normal operation of city council meetings, to have public comment time.
Yes, there have been times where they haven't provided it, and it's within the mayor's discretion whether or not to allow public comment. And he has exercised that discretion to not allow it in certain circumstances. When that's happened, he's not allowed it for anybody. Just
Okay.
that there will be no public comment tonight.
Okay, but unless the mayor makes that decision and announces it and then cuts off public comment for everyone, having public comment at your city council meetings is a normal practice.
Yes,
And you have, or the city has adopted procedures to how to best facilitate that.
yes.
And I believe you testified that the person who wants to make public comment has to sign up in advance.
Yes and no, they can sign up at the meeting, but it has to be before the meeting starts.
Okay, so they have to sign up before the meeting starts, and then they do the study session for an hour, and then public comment starts.
No, so they do study session for an hour, and then at 7, I believe that's when the city clerk takes the sign up and walks it up to the mayor, when the actual business meeting starts. We call it a regular meeting.
Okay, excellent, thank you for that. So you have to sign up in advance, and then the list is given to the mayor, and the mayor calls people forward for public comment.
Yes,
And then, once the mayor recognizes the person, they are permitted to speak for 3 minutes.
yes, as long as they are still recognized to speak.
Okay. And I believe, I keep seeing this, the lights. So we have red, orange, and green lights at the, would you call this the podium?
Yes,
Okay. And these are used to notify the speaker. Green is, you're good to keep talking. Is that right?
yes, I don't generally pay attention to that at all because I'm over on this side of the room. But it does change colors, I think, depending on how much time is left. And it starts at green, and when it's done, it's at red. I can't tell you when the middle color.
Okay, so you don't pay much attention to this, but this is an indicator to the person speaking.
Yes, it's for their benefit only.
Okay. And so when they've been recognized, it goes green and they're permitted to start speaking.
Yes.
And then typically during public comment period, the speaker is afforded 3 minutes to talk. And at the end of that 3 minutes, city council members may have questions. Is that
Yes.
right? But generally during the 3 minutes, the person who's at the podium is allowed to speak uninterrupted.
No. For example, if somebody makes a physical threat to city council, they
Sure.
would not be allowed to continue speaking. And they do have to comply with municipal code in order to begin speaking. So it's not an absolute 3 minutes the minute they're at the podium.
Okay. So barring threats or some other thing that puts public safety at risk, they can stand up here and speak about pretty much any topic they want to.
Yes, the topic is unrestricted, the content is unrestricted.
All right. So explain to us what to you it means to be recognized by the presiding officer.
So the mayor calls the person's name and asks them to give their name and address information. And once that's provided, then they're recognized to begin speaking.
Okay. Does the mayor formally recognize someone after they've given their name and place of residence?
Generally, he'll say something like, "Thank you, you may begin," something like that.
I would like to walk through a couple of videos. Let me just start with this. Is this how the live stream appears on YouTube in your experience?
I've never watched the YouTube, so I can't tell you. I don't know.
Okay. Do you see the city council regular session and the date down at the bottom?
I do.
Okay. And does this appear to be the room we're standing in?
It does.
And are these like familiar camera angles to you as far as how the live stream appears?
Actually, it's not a familiar, I've never watched the video.
Okay.
Of any meeting, except for the one we just did today.
Okay.
So it does appear to be this room, though, and it does appear to be a city council meeting.
Okay. There
Good
should
evening,
be
Ms.
volume.
Whitebird. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
And is that a voice that's familiar to you?
It sounds like Mayor Othaniel, so yeah.
Okay.
Zero.
Federal and Bellevue. Wow, I have lots.
Does this appear to be public comment period?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I would move to admit this is Defense Exhibit A.
Can you give me a date of that?
It is July 17th, 2023. It is a snip from the public comment period at the city council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cash, any?
No objection.
Okay, Exhibit A is admitted.
Okay, I'm going to back it up a little bit so we can kind of walk through the process of this speaker being recognized, okay? All right.
Good evening, Ms. Whitebird. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Jan,
So that's the mayor asking the speaker to give their name and identify where they live, right?
Yes.
Whitebird, Federal and Bellevue. Wow, I have lots of little things. One is I would set the PNZ.
So I did not hear the mayor say anything further after the person gave their name.
No, but the clock started after
the
she
clock.
gave it.
Okay.
So, and the green light turned on. So that was her indication that she,
That she could kind of continue.
that she complied with municipal code and
Okay.
construction.
So from the speaker's perspective, they can't see the clock, right? We can see it because the video is up there. But I think from the speaker's perspective, when the clock turns on, the light goes green. Is that right? So if I understand right, once the light goes green and the clock turns on, the person is free to start speaking. They've been recognized.
Generally, however, it's up to the mayor to recognize someone to speak, and it's the city clerks that start the clock and turn the light on. So there could be a disconnect there where the mayor actually hasn't recognized someone to speak and isn't done receiving the required information when the clerk, who's a different staff member, may have just went ahead and started the clock.
Then member
Okay.
Ward and then member Wright.
All right, let's look at another one. Same format here. This is from October 21st, 2024. Is that one of the city council members?
Yes, that's Councilmember Rita Russell.
Okay, I'm just going to play it forward a little.
We are allowed to use these distance requirements to really narrow.
Oh, I'm on the wrong video. Apologize. The print up here is really small. Here we are.
Address council as well.
All right, so we are on this one, July 17th, 2023. I believe that's the same meeting we were just talking about. This is just a different speaker.
The names Marcy Brown and District 1 will suffice. So there's cocktails with council tomorrow, I understand.
Okay, so we see the person give their name and say they're District 1, and then the light goes green and the clock turns on.
Yes, and if this was July 2023, I don't recall that particular meeting or if I was even there, but both municipal code and city council policies governing public comment have been changed since that time.
How so?
To specifically state the reason someone is required to provide the location information to guide city council. It also used to say that, municipal code used to say that public comment had to be limited to taxpayers of the city. and city council wanted to open it up to make sure anybody could speak. So just to,
So the requirement to give your name and cross streets or residence was in place in July 2023.
it was, yes.
What has changed is that you now are providing a reason for that.
Yes, because we found more and more people were refusing to comply with municipal code. And so city council inserted guidance as to why we need to do it. It's not just some requirement they pulled out of the air. It's been in municipal code for a very long time. And so they added into their council policies, this is why we have to have it.
And Regan Benson is one of the people who has refused to give her cross streets or address.
Yes, I can't tell you how many times or when, because generally I'm not listening to that part when people give that information. That's solely a function of the mayor to maintain order of the meeting and enforce that.
But you are aware that Ms. Benson is one of the people who has refused to give her cross streets or address.
Yes, I have seen her do that on more than one occasion.
And then city council changed the policy after she refused to do that.
They didn't change the policy, they just added in the reason why. So as you noted, the policy for years has been, and municipal code has been, that you have to provide that information.
It does not appear it was enforced in this video. Is that right?
No, city council was, I think, surprised when people started refusing to comply with municipal code. They have time, place, and manner restrictions to maintain order, and we expect a respectful exchange. And I think they didn't know what to do when people just started refusing to comply.
Your Honor, for purposes of the record, I don't think I've been moved to admit this video. I would move to admit the video, another video from July 17th, 2023. This person speaking, his name is Marcy Brown. I would move to admit that as Exhibit B.
And is that the one you just played?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. From Mr. Cash, any objection?
No objection.
All right, Exhibit B is admitted.
So we saw already on the video that Ms. Brown refuses to give her cross streets or her address, right?
Yes, she gave District 1, though, which is a location and identifier to city council members, because the reason they request that information is so that they know which council member is responsible for addressing and resolving that issue. And so we specifically have a council member that is elected from District 1, so that would be an identifier to the council member from District 1 that this is my constituent, I'm the one that should resolve this for them if there's something to be resolved.
Okay. So the city code says to use your address or cross streets.
Yes, or city residents outside the city.
District 1 does not comply with that rule.
No, it does not.
And it is on your city calendar as a meeting.
So Ms. Brown is allowed to continue speaking and uninterrupted, right?
I don't recall this meeting. It was almost a year and a half ago. So I can't tell you one way or the other.
Okay. And we see the green light and the clock ticking, right?
Yes.
I'm not going to play the entire thing because unless you want me to, I hope you'll take my word for it that she speaks uninterrupted until the end of her public comment time and then sits down.
I will agree that the video speaks for itself and it's been admitted into evidence.
Excellent. All right.
That's a very lawyer
Speaker
response.
is Regan Benson.
All right, so here we are on March 18th, 2024. Same format. Do you recognize this as the same room?
Yes.
Looks to me like the mayor was not at this meeting for whatever reason, but do you recognize the other people presiding over it?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I would move to admit this video clip from March 18th, 2024 as Exhibit C.
Mr. Cash, any objection?
No objection.
All right, so admitted.
Okay. Do you recognize the person at the podium?
No.
Benson will address council regarding when people fear their government. Ms. Benson, if you could state
Isn't
your
that a
address
great
or cross
opening line
streets.
So I believe the Mayor Pro Tem recognized Regan Benson.
Yes, and if I could see the face, I'm sure I would recognize Ms. Benson. It does appear to be her from the back, but because I can't see her face, I can't testify to that.
And I'm going to rewind a little bit just so we can get this back and forth here.
Regarding when people fear their government. Ms. Benson, if you could state
Isn't
your
that a
address
great
or
open
cross
line?
streets
When people
before.
fear their government.
If you could state your address or
When
cross
people
streets, we'd
fear
appreciate
their
it.
government, there's tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's liberty.
All right, now do you recognize Regan Benson?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe what we just heard was Ms. Benson be recognized and failed to give her address or cross streets, and yet she was allowed to proceed talking.
Yes. But I don't recall, I don't believe she was asked to leave, and I don't believe they had to take a recess, which differentiates it from the proceeding today.
Understood. And I will agree, the hearing officer can watch this video in its entirety later, that Ms. Benson is permitted to give her 5-minute public comment. I believe, is it 5 minutes at a study session or something?
No, so they changed public comment procedures. We studied it over the course of a year and then presented at a study session. This is what every other city does. We determined that we allowed 5 minutes to speak if somebody signed up before the meeting, and it was an unlimited total time period. And we were the most expansive of any city we found in the state of Colorado. So City Council changed it to 3 minutes per speaker, regardless of when you sign up, whether it's at the meeting or before, and then 90 minutes total. And that's what the current policy is.
Okay. In your experience, it is not unusual for people giving public comment to be passionate about what they're speaking about.
No, it's not.
They've taken time out of their lives to come to City Council, to wait their turn, and to petition to their public officials.
Yes.
And so it's not unusual for voices to be raised.
No, it's not unusual at all.
It's not unusual for people to gesture wildly.
No.
It's not unusual, certainly, for people to say things that are critical of the City Council members.
I think that's the intent of the speaker. I don't know if they consider it critical or if City Council does, but I think I would agree that when somebody comes to City Council to speak, they consider it a very important issue to themselves.
And most of the time, I mean, we mentioned that people can speak about anything they want to, but most of the time they are there to speak to their government officials about matters of public concern. Zoning issues, for example.
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it's unrelated to the city.
Community safety issues, for example,
Yes, that can
and
be,
homelessness.
certainly.
And homelessness is certainly a matter of public concern in Englewood.
Yes, it is.
Just a couple of questions procedurally. There's a phrase, call to order. What significance does that have in a City Council meeting?
That means everyone stops speaking except for the chair. The chair is the only one, when the chair or the mayor calls the meeting to order, that means only the mayor speaks. And only the mayor will speak until he recognizes somebody else to speak.
And where is that published?
Bob's Rules of Order, the City Council has adopted by reference in ordinance. I believe it's also in City Council policies that they adopted via motion. I can't tell you off the top of my head if it's also within municipal codes separately, but Bob's Rules of Order is incorporated by reference within municipal code.
So each of those says a meeting starts by calling the meeting to order. Okay?
I would
And that-
assume so. I don't have it memorized.
And that's the only reference to this phrase call to order that appears in the municipal code. Would you take my word for that?
No, I would want to independently verify that.
You do that. Let me know what you find. At City Council meetings, it is not unusual for City Council to take breaks.
I've only seen them do it during public comment twice, and they were both in the month of October 2024.
Okay. Let me ask my question again. It's not unusual to take breaks during a City Council meeting.
It is unusual when it's not in between agenda items. It is very unusual when it's in the middle of an agenda item.
But generally, if a city council person needs to take a break, they ask to take a break, and they take 5-minute breaks, 10-minute breaks, 15-minute breaks.
In between agenda items, yes, that does occur.
Okay. You don't need me to play you videos showing them taking breaks, do you?
No, they have done it, but only in between agenda items until October 2024.
Okay. City Code 1-5-2-9 is where this requirement to secure the permission of the presiding officer to speak comes from, and then the requirement that you provide your address across streets.
Can you give me that side again, please?
Yep, it's City Code 1-5-2-9.
Thank you.
Yes, I would note for the record that I don't know if the current version is on the online municipal code. There's a delay between the time it's adopted and an ordinance goes into effect until Civic Plus, which is the online code provider, uploads it to the website. So I can't speak to whether the current code is online, but it, by charter, goes into effect 30 days after second publication.
Okay, so if I'm understanding your testimony right, there may be a law in place that I can't access.
There's a reference to it up above in Muni Code that says these are ordinances that are adopted but are not yet implemented into the code below. So it is accessed online. It also can be accessed through the city council meeting website, which has the same link to the video. The agendas and the ordinances are on there as well.
Okay, so there may be laws in place that if I go to the Englewood Municipal Code online are not the same, right? You may have adopted a law, the city council may have adopted a law that is not accurately reflected in the city code that appears online?
There could be a delay because it's not immediately uploaded to the online municipal code in consecutive order. It is on there. It shows that it's been adopted, but just hasn't been implemented into the consecutive code below.
Are you trying to hold Regan Benson accountable for any law that she wasn't aware of?
No. In fact, this exclusion is only brought under state law, CRS 18-9-110.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I believe when you testified that one of the things she allegedly did wrong, in your view, is to not give her name or not to give her address or cross street.
Yes, that was a violation of municipal code, and it's in current code. That part is in the published municipal code because it's been in municipal code for many years. But the exclusion is based solely on two things. The mayor asked her to leave, and she refused to leave in violation of CRS 18-9-110, and that she disrupted the meeting to such a degree that city council had to take a recess in the middle of public comment. So that forms the basis of the exclusion, not whether or not she refused to provide her address information.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that because that was unclear to me. So you are not seeking to exclude her from city council because she failed to comply with 1-5-2-9?
No, solely because she violated CRS 18-9-110.
Okay, I would like to jump to that then. You are seeking to exclude Ms. Benson from city council meetings because she violated a state statute, right?
Yes,
And 18-9-110 is part of the Colorado Revised Statutory Code adopted by the Colorado Legislature.
yes.
It makes a violation of that provision a misdemeanor offense punishable by time in jail and a fine.
I've never prosecuted it, but I have seen reference in the statute that it is a misdemeanor.
You've never prosecuted it because you're not authorized to prosecute it.
Right, I'm not a prosecutor, I'm the civil city attorney.
The entity that is authorized to prosecute violations of Title 18 are the district attorneys.
Yes,
And the district attorney, we are here in Englewood, it is in the 18th Judicial District.
yes,
And the district attorney for the 18th Judicial District is John Kellner.
yes, that's my understanding.
And John Kellner and none of his deputies are here today.
No, because this is not a criminal proceeding that they are prosecuting in this venue.
If it was a criminal proceeding, Ms. Benson would be entitled to a jury.
I've never been a prosecutor within the state of Colorado, so I can't speak to that.
Okay. So you want to exclude her from city council meetings for violating a state statute that you're not authorized to enforce?
No, but it does form a violation under our standards of behavior that would support ejection and/or exclusion from city facilities.
Right, if she has been convicted of violating the statute. Right now, Ms. Benson is presumed innocent, right?
In a criminal proceeding, but not in an administrative proceeding such as this one.
Okay, so you will admit that Ms. Benson, who is facing criminal charges for this same incident, right?
It is my understanding that the district court judge in the 18th Judicial District did find probable cause and issued an arrest warrant based on these same facts, and that the DA is prosecuting, yes.
It's a county court judge, not a district court judge, but correct.
Thank you.
An arrest warrant was issued for Ms. Benson. There is an active criminal case against her in the 18th Judicial District, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
You are cooperating with that prosecution.
I have had no contact with the prosecutor in that case, nor have I been a witness, but if I'm asked to be a witness, then yes, I would be.
And you sent an email to the investigating detective that was relied upon for the basis to find probable cause for that.
I sent an email to the police officer who was here during the city council meeting on October 7th, yes.
Okay. And so you are aware she is being prosecuted actively in Arapahoe County for this?
That's my understanding, yes.
And as somebody who went to law school and has a JD, you're aware that that comes with a presumption of innocence?
In general, yes, criminal proceedings do.
That unless and until a jury of her peers finds her guilty, she is presumed innocent?
In a criminal case, yes, but not in an administrative case that has a different burden of proof.
You are not aware that there is any proof that she has been convicted by a jury of her peers of violating state statute?
No, nor is a conviction required to support an administrative exclusion.
I understand that's your legal position. We can disagree. I'm going to change topics. I want to talk to you about the importance of consistently applying the City of Englewood's policies. One of your jobs as city attorney is to advise city council and other municipal employees of decisions that they need to make and ensure those comply with all of the laws.
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that?
Yep, it was a very long-winded question, so my apologies for that. One of your jobs as city attorney is to advise people who are making decisions on behalf of the government to try to ensure that their decisions comply with the law.
In general, yes, but with a long list of exceptions, because I don't know what I don't know.
Well, and you aren't consulted on every decision that gets made by a city employee.
Yes.
But when a city employee comes to you for legal advice, part of your job is to try to advise them accurately and minimize risk to the City of Englewood.
Yes.
And you understand that it's important that the City of Englewood applies its policies in a uniform manner.
That is our goal, yes. It's not always possible.
You want to avoid any appearance of discrimination.
Yes.
You want to avoid any appearance of retaliation.
Yes.
And retaliation can look like you could be retaliating against someone for making a complaint, like an internal affairs complaint, right?
Can you be more specific?
I mean, I'm just trying to throw out an example of what retaliation means, right? You want to avoid retaliating against somebody for doing something they're entitled to do.
Yes, I would say in general, we do not retaliate.
I want to move to this exclusion notice. Who made the decision that Ms. Benson's conduct violated the disruptive behavior policy?
Are you referring to Exhibit 2? I just want to make sure.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I did.
Can you please explain for us your decision-making thought processes?
Yes, for the, of course, the standards of behavior, which is Exhibit 3. Tier 1, at the very top, states disruptive activity behavior interfering with normal use operation of a city facility is a violation that supports a 45-day exclusion from that property for a first offense. And so when I said in the October 7th meeting, during the public comment period, the mayor was attempting to maintain order, attempting to enforce municipal code, and he was interrupted. He repeatedly stated he was calling the meeting to order, trying to obtain order, but he was not allowed to obtain the floor. And then the mayor took a recess. Well, I believe the mayor pro tem said we should take a recess, and the mayor agreed. And city council went into recess during the middle of public comment, which they have never done before, at least in the 3 years I've been city attorney. So the city council, the purpose of a city council meeting is to conduct city business. And city council was unable to do so. The mayor was unable to even speak and have the floor when someone else was not recognized to speak. So it disturbed the normal meeting. And then I reviewed CRS 18-9-110.
I don't want to talk about that statute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, so, but then I did review the statute, which laid out a legal standard for disturbing
I want
a
to
meeting.
please stick with disruptive activity and behavior. I want to try to separate those out, and I'm trying to get a better understanding of disruptive activity and behavior right now, okay?
Okay, but to answer your question, I did review the statute to see what it said was disturbing or interfering with a meeting.
Okay. Was it the volume that Ms. Benson was talking at?
No,
The tone of her voice?
no,
The content?
no.
It was, I believe you said, her refusal to stop speaking when the mayor was trying to interrupt her.
She no longer had the floor to speak. She was not authorized to speak at that time, yet she continued to do so.
And this was during public comment period?
Yes,
And the purpose of public comment period is for members of the public like Ms. Benson to be able to have their voice heard by their government officials.
yes, after they provide the requisite information under municipal code to enable them. to
After they've
obtain the
been
floor.
recognized, right?
After they provide the information.
Well, we've watched 3 videos so far where people didn't provide the information, and they're allowed to speak uninterrupted for the duration of their public comment period, right?
Yes, a year and a half ago, that did happen. And apparently that happened in March 2024 as well.
Okay.
For the video that you showed in Exhibit C.
Right, so we've watched 2 videos from July 2023, one from March 2024. Let's go ahead and look at another one since we're still stuck on this issue.
Up next is a list.
All right, so this is a video from October 21st, 2024. So this is a video after Ms. Benson was cited, right?
I can't tell you for sure when she was cited, but I would assume it was before October 21.
Your Honor, I would move to admit this video from October 21st, 2024. It's during public comment period of the city council meeting as Exhibit D.
Mr. Cash, any objection?
No objection.
Exhibit D is admitted.
Elizabeth, topic being homelessness. Or homeless, sorry. Good evening, Elizabeth. You could just
Good
state your
evening.
name and your address or cross streets.
My name is Elizabeth. My address is 1428 Elm Street, Springwood, Ohio.
Thank you.
Have you seen the movie Nightmare on Elm Street?
Relevance hearing officer.
I have, but it's maybe been 40 years ago. I don't even know when it came out.
Oh, you take my word for
And the
it.
relevance is?
1428 Elm Street, Springwood, Ohio, is the residence for the house in the Nightmare on Elm Street. That's the relevance, Your Honor.
Yeah,
All right,
I
so
didn't know that.
This person gave a totally fictional address, right?
I didn't know that. And I mean, if you're assuring me that she did in fact
All right,
violate
let's just-
municipal code and gave a false address, I will believe you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Elizabeth. I thought living on Elm Street is a nightmare until I saw the city of Englewood. It's a scary place if you are homeless, or a homeless advocate. Here, you will be criminalized and falsely arrested for standing up for your rights if you are just a homeless.
All right, so the speaker then ties in this reference to it being a nightmare to live in Englewood, right?
That's clever.
And this video is 2 minutes and 43 seconds. I will represent to the court that she is allowed to speak uninterrupted during this time period. All right, we're gonna look at one more from the same city council meeting.
Here's Regan Benson. I know Regan's out.
You see October 21st, 2024 down there at the bottom. It's kind of hard to see on this one. Can you see that?
I can see that. It's
Okay.
date. Yeah, thank you.
Your Honor, I'll just go ahead and move to admit as Exhibit E this video, which is a clip from public comment during the same city council meeting.
All right, Mr. Cash.
No objection.
Exhibit E is admitted.
Okay.
You want to see if Regan wants to? Thank you, Gary.
I did appreciate on this that Ms. Benson wasn't in the room, but the mayor actually sent someone out to get her because she was outside of the room so that she could.
There's no question pending.
Okay.
Regan, can you put down your phone, please? And not
Put
record
it
for that-
down?
And not record this session. If you need to record, you can leave it at the back of the room.
I'm recording my public comment, just like I did last time.
Regan, if you could put the camera at the back of the room and then you can state your name, your city, or your address
So you
across
want
streets
the
and
phone
begin.
down?
Yes, please.
Is
Thank
that
you.
okay?
Yes.
Okay, what else do you
Regan-
need from me?
So Regan, if you could just state your name and your address across streets or the city that you reside.
The city that I reside in, Utopia.
We can start the clock. Regan, if you could just state your name and your address or the city that you reside in.
All right, so we hear Ms. Benson give the name Utopia and then she is recognized by the mayor.
Yes.
And the recognition process is you can start the clock, the light goes green, the clock starts.
Yes.
I'm going to pull up the video that has been admitted as Exhibit 1, which is the video of the comment at issue. And I want to walk through it a little more slowly than Mr. Cash did.
All right, everyone, we're moving on to recognition of public comment.
I'm going to go
This is an
to 5:30 on this because I just want to get to the part where Ms. Benson is speaking. All right, I'm going to start it at 5:19 because otherwise it's going to jump too far.
Do you know then if possibly the other people there are related or just, I know it's,
Some are related and some are not.
okay, all right, that's what I needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for coming tonight. Up next is Regan Benson with no topic given. Good evening, Regan. If you could just state your name and your address across streets.
Good evening, council. I'm not giving you my cross streets or my address, but it is good to see you
city.
again. I want to talk
Regan,
to you
actually,
about
can you
all
state-
those.
All right, so we see Ms. Benson approach the podium with her phone that she's recording her own public comment with, and then we see the mayor ask her to give her name and cross streets, and she refuses, and then the light goes green and she begins speaking, right?
Yes, that does appear to be the case.
Standing up here.
Mayor, the
and
speaker
talking
is
to you
interrupting the meeting.
about the criminalization that you started down in the library
Call of order.
on me.
Regan, call of
Guess
order.
what?
Regan, please.
So at 6:33, I believe Ms. Benson started speaking. Actually, let's just go back and get good timestamps on this. Apologies for not making a better record. Okay. I'm going to start at 6:51.
My cross streets or my address, but it is good to
Or
see
your
you
city.
again.
Okay, so I see at 5:56, the clock goes on and the
I wanna
light turns green. I believe the light turns green at 5:57 for purposes of the record. Would you agree with that, Ms. Niles?
I'm not wearing my glasses, so I
Okay.
can't see the timestamp, but if I will
I'm-
take
I'm
your
with-
assurance
I'm with you on
for
that.
it.
Talk
Regan,
to you
actually,
about
can you
all
stay-
those things that
Regan,
we've talked about in
Regan,
the
can you please
past
hold?
as far as the
Regan,
criminalization
please
that
stop.
you've.
Regan.
Excuse me.
No, Regan,
This
we
is
asked
my
you for-
time.
Regan, we asked you for
Excuse
your
me,
address.
this is my time.
Regan, if you can please
And I'm going
stop.
to make public comment, and I'm going to do it for 3 minutes uninterrupted, and if you interrupt me, I'm going to talk louder.
Regan,
So,
no,
back
Regan,
to
I
my
asked you just to
public
state the city that you reside in.
standing up here.
Mayor,
and
the speaker
talking
is
to you
interrupting the meeting.
about the criminalization that you started down in the library
Call of order.
on me.
Regan, call of
Guess
order.
what?
Regan.
One other thing I don't think we've talked about, this green light on the microphone is illuminated when it is active.
Yes.
Okay, and right now at 6:32, the green light is still active, right?
Again, I can't see the timestamp, but
Oh.
I will accept your assurance that that's what time it is.
Okay.
Please stay, Regan, can you please stop speaking?
Then, you guys decided that you were going to run.
Mayor, can I ask that we take a
It sounds to me that right around this 6:41, you can't hear Ms. Benson anymore, even though the green light is still on.
I can still hear her, it's just not as loud, I think, as it was. But just from sitting here, I think city council microphones may be louder than other microphones, but
That makes sense.
just from sitting in meetings, it seems to be the case.
break?
I agree. So city council's gonna take a break while the city attorney and the police department figure out a way to control the situation. Thank you.
And I'd like to
All right, so at 6:53, we have city council taking a break. You take my word for that, that's the number.
Yes, I will take your word for that.
I believe that's about a minute after Ms. Benson was recognized and the light turned green. Or no, yes, I believe 5:50 something was when she was recognized and the light turns green, and now we're at 6:53. You agree with that?
I wouldn't say she was recognized, she was called to the podium and asked to give her name and cross streets, which
The light-
is different than recognizing someone to speak for public comment.
And the light turned green?
The light turns green when the person at the podium pushes it.
No, this one.
Oh, I'm sorry. For the record, I'll say, I was pointing to the microphone light green, not the time light green. Yes, it's my understanding the city clerk turns that light green on.
And so right now, we're
I'm
at
sorry,
about a
the city
minute.
clerk turns that green light on, and it appears they had done so.
And that appears to have, when city council leaves the dais, is about a minute after the light that indicates when Ms. Benson can start speaking turns green.
I know the clock started about 5:56 pursuant to your questions. I didn't write down when the clock turned green, but if that's your assurance from your records and watching the video, then I will defer to that. The video speaks for itself, and the hearing officer certainly can review that.
Okay. And then, once city council leaves, 2 of the city council members stayed, 4 of the city council members left, right?
Yes, that's my recollection.
Okay. And I believe you testified earlier, and we saw in the video that Ms. Benson stayed at the podium and continued giving her public comment while 4 of the members had chosen to leave the meeting.
Yes.
And Ms. Benson continued to speak, and I believe the timestamp was 10:55 that the mayor came back and said, Ms. Benson, your time is up. Do you want to get to that point? All right, I'm going to start it at 10:54. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit because I think the video.
Ms. Benson?
All right, so I'm going to say it's 10:53 when we hear the mayor's voice as if they've come back in and asked Ms. Benson to leave. The video doesn't start for a few seconds after that, but this timestamp is 10:53. So it looks like to me the 4 city council members were out away from the dais for 4 minutes. Am I doing my math right?
Yes, and I was in the room, and so during that time period, 4 city council members were off of the dais outside of city council chambers during that entire period until the mayor came back and again addressed Ms. Benson.
And you stayed here in the room during that time?
Yes, you're gesturing to where I normally sit. I wasn't there the entire time. I did go to the back of the room, and then I went into where city council was as well and let them know they could come back in.
Okay. Who makes, I believe you said the clerk's office turns on this light and starts the clock.
Yes.
Who makes the decision about whether to turn off the live feed or not?
That I don't know. I haven't been a participant in
And when the mayor came back, he said, Ms. Benson, your time is up. And she, after a little bit of an exchange, went to the back of the room and did not leave, but she left the podium.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And after she left the podium, the meeting was able to continue and business was conducted. The next speaker was called up and the meeting went on.
Yes, that's right.
And Ms. Benson stood at the back of the room, but she did nothing to interfere with the meeting.
I couldn't see. From where I sit, and for the record, I think we're audio, there's a big column between where I'm sitting in the back of the room, so I couldn't, I think I just glanced up once and saw her, but I will say from where I could see, the meeting was able to progress without further interruption.
Okay. And if she was causing some major commotion, likely your attention would have been drawn to it.
I would anticipate so, yes.
So I want to better understand the process of, you said you filled out the exclusion form
Yes.
and then gave it to who?
I believe I emailed it to the officer that was in the room during this meeting on October 7th.
And who is that?
I believe it was Chris Caggiano.
Okay. And did you give any instructions as to when it was to be served or how it was to be served on Ms. Benson?
No, I requested that the address and birth date information be completed because I didn't have that and wouldn't maintain it, even if I had seen it before, which I don't believe I have. But so I emailed it to them and asked that someone serve it on Ms. Benson.
Okay. You knew that Ms. Benson was coming here to this room for an exclusion hearing the last time the city tried to keep her out of this building, right?
Yes, I believe so.
And you're aware that Ms. Benson was actually served with a copy of this exclusion notice as she walked in for her hearing on the other exclusion.
I wasn't here, so I can't speak to that.
Have you talked with the officer who served this exclusion, Officer Watts?
I have before, yes.
Have you talked with him about the process of serving this exclusion notice?
I don't believe I have, but it's possible he reached out to me to tell me it was served, but I can't recall specifically.
Okay. Were you involved with the City of Englewood's efforts to try to have Ms. Benson prosecuted for unauthorized practice of law?
No.
Are you aware that that happened?
I do know several years ago, the city prosecutor had filed a complaint with the Colorado Supreme Court regarding Ms. Benson's unauthorized practice of law in Englewood Municipal Court. I was not consulted before that occurred, but I did find out about it after the fact, most particularly when the Colorado Supreme Court sustained the allegation or the complaint.
It's your recollection that the Colorado Supreme Court sustained the complaint that Ms. Benson was engaging in unauthorized practice of law?
Yes, that they found that it had occurred, but they were taking no action for it. I believe they stated they had counseled her and they were assured it wouldn't happen again or something like that. It's been several years. But I did see a copy of the letter that they sent to the city prosecutor.
And you believe that came from the Colorado Supreme Court?
I believe so, but again, it's been a few years. And no action came out of it, so I just looked at it and moved on. We have a very high workload in our office.
Were you involved with the city's efforts to have Ms. Benson prosecuted for harassment?
For which incident?
For videotaping Damian Ellison, the Allied security guard, in this building?
I was not involved in that prosecution, no.
Were other people in your office involved?
What do you mean involved?
Did anyone in your office have a conversation with Damian Elligan?
Not to my knowledge.
So if Mr. Elligan testified, then someone from the city attorney's office called him and told him to make a police report that he had been harassed, you know nothing about it.
Hearing officer, I would just ask that the opposing counsel demonstrate how prior issues with Ms. Benson, including prior incidents for which they have already had resolved exclusion hearings, are relevant to the issue today, especially when our witness has testified she was not personally involved or has personal knowledge of the intricacies of the incident.
Well, and I don't know how she's able to testify as to whether anyone in her office had contact with the person you referred to.
I'm only asking for your personal knowledge of what other people who work under you might have done.
And this relates to an incident that has nothing to do with the exclusion hearing?
I do not believe they have nothing to do with each other.
Well, I'm asking. I'm trying to understand myself. So this is for an alleged harassment that occurred outside of the events on October 7th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
So
and
one
how-
of the things
How is
here-
that relevant?
Sure. One of the things that you have to decide today is, one, whether there's been a proof of a code violation, and two, whether the exclusion would be lawful. The city of Englewood is undertaking a pattern of decision-making intended to retaliate against my client. If you find and believe that this alleged violation is just another step along that process, that is an unlawful order. You cannot retaliate against someone for exercising their protected First Amendment rights. So we had a hearing. Ms. Benson was criminally charged with harassment. That case was dismissed because what she was doing, recording a security guard in a public building, is protected activity. Then we had an exclusion hearing. Here, different hearing officer, and the hearing officer found they had proved no violation, okay, because Ms. Benson was recording this security officer with intent to protect herself and an intent to hold government officials accountable and not intent to harass. And so the day she walks in for this hearing, she gets served with this exclusion notice. They also are prosecuting her for this. They are trying to silence her.
So I understand the points that you're trying to make. And as I indicated as we started the hearing, the city has the burden pursuant to section 1143 to show by a preponderance of the evidence that the person issued the exclusion committed the rule violation that's been alleged. The issuance, duration, and conditions of the exclusion are lawful. I will allow very brief continuance, but brief.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you, Your Honor.
And only as to what city attorney has personal knowledge of, not what her entire office has done.
Absolutely. And
Thank you.
I don't want you to speculate about something somebody else might have done, just to the extent they've told you about it, talked to you about it, or you know about it, okay? So are you aware of any conversations between people in your office and Damian Elligan?
No.
Are you aware that Mr. Elligan testified at the last hearing that someone from your office called him and told him to make a police report that he had been harassed?
No, I'm not aware of anything about which he's testified.
Have you heard the audio recording of Mr. Elegant calling into Englewood Dispatch where he says that someone from the city attorney's office called him and told him to call this number?
No.
If I could have a moment, Your Honor. I have nothing further for this witness.
All right, thank you. Any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. And hearing officer, are you ready? All right, we're good.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Niles, for your patience and for being here today. I have a few questions just about the testimony you gave, hopefully to clarify a few issues just on a few points. So you spoke with opposing counsel about how the mayor had been designated as an official by email approximately 90 days ago. Is that accurate to what you testified to?
Yes.
Okay, and just for clarification, for sure this was prior to the October 7th public comment period?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Additionally, we watched and omitted into evidence several exhibits that show city council public comment periods from 2023 as well as earlier in 2024. I guess specifically sticking to the 2023 videos, at this time, had the mayor been formally designated to enforce the rules?
That would have been, 2023 would have been prior to the email, but in practice, he was charged with maintaining order during city council meetings. I would have to look at what charter and municipal code specifically says about the mayor's authority on that. But no, the city manager had not given him a designation specifically.
Thank you. And we spoke quite a bit, and you testified quite a bit about the city policy that requires an individual to provide their cross streets or address if they live in Englewood prior to giving public comment. So I'd just like to turn your attention to that for a moment. So with regard to that policy, first of all, does the authorized official charged with maintaining order in city council meetings, do they have discretion to enforce city policies?
Yes, I would say it's their responsibility to do so. I think sometimes we've never seen a violation, and the mayor is an elected official just trying to do the best that he can, and so he doesn't know what to do. And so he may ask me after the meeting some information about what should I do if this happens again. But yes, it's his responsibility to enforce those policies.
All right. So based on your knowledge as the city attorney, and again, if anything gets into privileged information, please just let me know. I don't want to overstep on the bounds of confidentiality. However, to your knowledge, just because the mayor declines to enforce a rule when he notices a violation does not mean that he acknowledges that a violation did not occur or that the rule is unenforceable. Is that correct?
That's right. Failure to enforce does not thereby waive the rule created by the governing body or the law.
Okay, thank you. And then going back to turning your attention to Ms. Benson's conduct in general, as well as the exclusion notice, which is emitted as Exhibit 2. Was Ms. Benson excluded for violating the policy requiring her to give her address prior to delivering public comment?
No, in fact, that was the initial incident that started this. That's not why she was excluded. She was excluded for disturbing the meeting, not allowing the mayor to speak when the mayor had the floor. And then secondarily for when the mayor requested her to leave, that she failed to do so. Both are violations of state law that form the basis for the exclusion, not the failure to give the address information.
All right, thank you. So to your knowledge, it was not Ms. Benson's, Ms. Benson would not have been excluded had she complied even after violating the city policy. I can rephrase. I believe you've answered that she was not excluded for a violation of the city policy. I don't want to be repetitive on that front. But can you just remind the court, based on your knowledge as well as the person who issued the exclusion notice, why Ms. Benson was excluded? Or which, turning to the standards of behavior, which standards of behavior that she violated?
Yes, so she violated the disruptive activity behavior by interfering with the normal operation of city council meeting, specifically when the mayor had the floor, not allowing the mayor to speak.
Okay, I'll cut you off right there. So
And then the secondary one of the criminal violation of the two violations of statute, which overlap with the disturbing the meeting, because that's also a statutory violation.
Yes, okay, thank you. So going back to the first violation of disruptive behavior, that does not specifically identify any criminal statute or is contingent on any criminal statute, is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that?
So the disruptive behavior violation that you've testified is on the standards of behavior. That is a violation of city policy. It's not enumerated on the standards of behavior as a violation of state law, is that correct?
Yes and no, because Tier 2 does specifically refer to violation of any applicable criminal law. But so it refers to it by reference. However, a criminal case, the prosecutor has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and they are guilty until proven innocence. In this case, it's a preponderance of the evidence standard, which is a much lower standard.
I apologize, I'm probably I'm confusing. Let me clarify just a little bit. So you've testified that she is excluded, 1, for a Tier 1 violation of disruptive behavior or actions, and then 2, for 3 enumerated statutory violations. Is that correct?
Yes, and then down at the bottom it says other violations of CRS 18-9-110 during city council meeting.
But just this disruptive behavior violation in and of itself, not the 3 statutory violations. That violation of itself, to your knowledge, is not contingent upon a state statute or any criminal law. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct, because some people could maybe disrupt the library by screaming in the library. That's not necessarily a criminal violation, but there are certain library rules regarding your tone of voice and volume. So whether or not a criminal case resulted or the status of that criminal case is irrelevant to the proceeding for an exclusion.
Okay, thank you. And then just one more question about the standards of behavior. To your knowledge, a conviction is not required to demonstrate a violation of the city policy related to violating any applicable criminal law. Is that correct?
That's correct, because for several reasons. For example, the DA could decline prosecution on a matter, but that doesn't prohibit the city proceeding for an exclusion arising out of the same behavior. And again, even if it doesn't arise to the criminal level, it still can form the basis of an exclusion for a preponderance of the evidence for non-criminal behavior.
Okay, thank you very much. And going back, we watched the video several times now of the incident itself on October 7th at the public commenting period. We heard testimony with regard to the green, yellow, and red light, as well as the green light of the microphone itself. To your knowledge, is because the green light on the microphone is on, does that indicate that someone is authorized to speak?
No, the green light on the microphone is something we do ourselves. So for example, I'm pushing the button, it turned my light off. It's something I control on the microphone.
Yeah, I've been struggling with it all morning, so I appreciate that.
We put a star button to help people on the buttons.
And then we've testified as well. I can review the video if necessary, but if you remember, there may not be a need to. But at some point when Ms. Benson comes up and is acknowledged by the mayor, this light turned green. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what the video showed.
Okay, and then after Ms. Benson refused to give her address information and was interrupting the mayor, the light was cut off. Is that correct?
I think so, but I would defer to the video that's already been admitted into evidence. I think we already talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, no worries at all. I just want to clarify one thing with regard to that aspect. I'm pulling up Exhibit 1, and I am pulling to 519, and that's which should be the beginning of Ms. Benson's testimony. And let me play a moment of that.
Do you know then if possibly the other people there are related, or just, I know it's...
Some are related and some are not.
Okay, all right, that's what I needed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for coming tonight. Up next is Regan Benson with no topic given. Good evening, Regan. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Good evening, council. I'm not giving you my cross streets or my address, but it is good to see you
city.
again. I want to talk
Regan,
to you
actually,
about
can you
all
state-
those things that
Regan,
we've talked about
Regan,
in the
can you please
past
hold?
as far as the
Regan.
criminalization.
Okay, so right there, Ms. Niles, to your knowledge, was the light turned off?
Yes, and I do want to apologize to Ms. Hubbard. I just realized I can see the screen right here, and close up I can see the time. So I didn't even realize there were screens right in front of my face.
Actually, they haven't been working most of the time.
Okay.
Sometimes they work, so it's helpful, and if they don't, I'm looking up here. But in any
Okay.
event, for the record.
So I can now see at 6:02 on the video, the lights went off. That tells me that likely the city clerk went ahead and turned it on, and then when the city clerk realized that that Ms. Benson actually wasn't recognized to speak because she hadn't given the information, she then turned it off. Probably a whoops information or a reaction to that, and then undid it. But I am completely speculating. All I know for sure is that the city clerks manually turn it on and off.
Okay, so the mayor, who's the authorized official, isn't manually turning the light on and off himself, is that correct?
No, a staff member is.
Thank you. And then I'm going to play just a little bit more of the video.
Regan.
Excuse me.
No, Regan.
This
we
is
asked you
my
for-
time.
Regan, we asked you for
Excuse
your
me,
address.
this is my time.
Regan, if you can please
And I'm
stop.
going to make public comment, and I'm going to do it for 3 minutes uninterrupted. And if you interrupt me, I'm going to talk louder.
Regan,
back
Regan,
to
I
my
asked you just
public
to state the city that you reside in.
Standing up here.
Mayor, the
and
speaker
talking
is
to you
interrupting
about
the meeting.
The criminalization that you started down in the library
Call of order.
on me.
Regan, call
Guess
of order.
what?
Regan, please stay. Regan, can you please stop speaking?
You guys decided that you were going to run.
Mayor, can I ask that we take a break?
I agree. So city council is going to take a break while the city attorney and the police department figure out a way to control the situation. Thank you.
And I'd like to
Okay, so based on what you just saw, the recess was called at approximately 6 minutes and 53 seconds into this video. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I can see the clock on this little screen right in front of me.
And then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to the end of the recess. I'll go a few seconds before, just so we don't miss anything.
Ms. Benson, your time is
So
up.
10:54 is where I'm jumping to.
Your time is up. Ms. Benson,
Okay, so at approximately, we'll just call it 10, it cuts in a little bit. So we'll just say 10 minutes and 50 seconds approximately is when city council reconvenes to address Ms. Benson. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe the previous, on cross, it was 10 minutes and 53 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And then again, the video went to a splash screen and cut out for a while, but to your knowledge, Ms. Benson did continue to speak and was present at the podium during this time. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's all the questions I had about the video. I'm going to move on just to ask a few last questions. Hopefully it won't take too long. So we've testified with regard a little bit to the city code, specifically with regard to the publication of the city code online. So does this, to your knowledge, does the city's online code include adopted ordinances that you can see that an ordinance was adopted prior to its formal incorporation?
Yes.
Okay. And then in addition to that, on the code itself, there's a note if there is a pending ordinance that will affect the code. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And by charter, ordinances are effective 30 days after second publication.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, this is just based on your knowledge as a longtime attorney and a city attorney. Generally in criminal matters, is ignorance that a law exists a defense to being charged with a law or a ordinance?
No, in fact, there's case law specifically to that effect.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to clarify, we heard a little bit about a previous exclusion notice issued to Damian Elligan. I just want to clarify that to your knowledge, you're unaware of any communication between the city attorney's office and Mr. Elligan.
No, we have multiple attorneys in the city attorney's office as well as the city prosecutor. So no, I don't have knowledge of that. And I personally had no conversations with Mr. Elligan.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one or two more questions about the conditions of the exclusion notice itself. So to clarify, as part of the 45-day exclusion to Ms. Benson, is she prevented from delivering public comment at future city council meetings?
No, during the exclusion period, she can still give public comment, she can still attend city council meetings. It would just be online via video. And the way it works, the screen over here that has the 4 icons in the corner, her name would be up on the screen, and during public comment, her picture would come up and she could still give public comment. So the exclusion doesn't prohibit that, it just prohibits her from personally attending city council chambers for 45 days, but there's a full video option, interactive. We regularly have city council members attend via video as well.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I have with regard to the exclusion notice is, I can refer to the exhibit if you don't remember off the top of your head, but does it include any exceptions enumerated on the notice of exclusion itself?
Yes, there is an exception at the top of page 2.
And can you just read
on
that for
exhibit
me?
2. Yes. It states, if no alternative location or manner exists, you may conduct in-person official city business at the city location above by first contacting Englewood Police Department with a phone number to arrange for a police escort or as ordered by the Englewood Municipal Judge. So because there is an alternative manner to attend via video, I don't know that that would apply here, but there is an exception. This doesn't prohibit conducting city business.
Okay, so pursuant to the exception, if a hearing officer or some other adjudicative body were to determine that there was an official business purpose that Ms. Benson had to be here, she would be permitted to under the exclusion notice, is that correct?
Yes, if she first contacted Englewood Police Department, but again, that's if no alternative location or manner exists.
All right, thank you. And then, so the only thing that Ms. Benson is prevented from is to deliver public comment physically standing at this podium, but otherwise has access to city council meetings.
Actually, the exclusion doesn't even refer to public comment. It's just applies to just Englewood City Council chambers in person.
No, I misstated that. I apologize. What I meant to say was, so the only thing that she's excluded from is being present in city council chambers for 45 days, but still has alternative means to deliver speech on any topic that she would like within the city's rules.
Yes, and again, it just applies to in person. So she can still attend city council meetings just via video.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Just one that I'd like to follow up on. You were asked some questions about the fact that just because the mayor doesn't stop a meeting doesn't mean there hasn't been a code violation. Do you remember that line of question? I know I didn't say it. I didn't say it the same way. Other than Ms. Benson, can you recall the last time someone was asked to leave a city council meeting when they refused to give their address or cross street?
No, I can't recall another time.
Does the city keep statistics on when people are given exclusion notices?
Not to my knowledge.
Does the city keep any records related to when someone is cited for violating the disruptive activity standard?
Not to my knowledge, but I don't generally see these. We drafted them, but generally, we drafted the form, but generally I don't have any other interaction with them. In fact, I would have to contact PD records to see was there a prior, something like that, because I don't have access to any records of them.
And you said PD records, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it says on the front of Exhibit 2, email a copy to records@englewoodco.gov. That's police department, just their records system. So they are, I believe, the repository of all of these, but I don't know of any tracking system or anything like that.
Okay, that actually was what I was trying to understand, so I appreciate you guessed my next couple of questions. So can I just say this back to you to make sure that I actually do understand it? Your office made the form, but then the form can be completed by any other city official?
Yes.
And so, for example, a librarian can give someone an exclusion notice if they believe someone's been disruptive in the library.
Yes.
And then it's your understanding that they would fill out this form, it would be served, and then they would email a copy to records@englewoodco.gov.
Yes.
Okay, so if statistics or records related to how frequently the disruptive activity standard is cited, the best source for that would be the records department?
Likely, and we put it on the form, that doesn't mean people actually do it. So it certainly could be possible that the library perhaps served a form, but just put it in their file and didn't follow through on that last step. But, so I can't guarantee Records has every single one, but my hope is that they do. And that's who I personally would go to ask if there'd been a prior offense.
Okay. Can you recall another time during your tenure where this light that the clerk turns on went green and then was turned off within 10 seconds?
I can't, but I don't know that I've ever watched either. That's not something that I would pay attention to. Generally, I'm listening to the content, but certainly not paying attention. I can't see the clock from where I sit. It's directly across from it, and so it's not something I would look at.
Can you recall during your tenure another time, I know you gave the example earlier that if someone made a threat during their public comment period, they would be stopped and removed, right? Mm-hmm. Can you recall that happening?
No.
Can you recall during your tenure anyone ever being stopped in the middle of their public comment period, other than Ms. Benson?
I can't personally recall any time, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. And of course, I take vacations occasionally, so I'm not at every meeting either.
Yep, okay. But just from your memory in the 3 years you've been sitting during the city council meetings, you can't recall another incident?
No, I can't.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I cover the exhibits before I forget. So city admitted Exhibit 1 was a flash drive. I have Exhibits 2 and 3, which are these hard copies. And then Ms. Hubbard, you admitted A, B, C, D, and E. Do you have a flash drive?
They're on a flash drive.
Everything's on? Okay.
There are other videos on there, so if we could, maybe after we finish today, I'll pull the other ones off.
That would be great. I just
Okay.
want to make sure I have that
Yep,
for my
yep.
purposes. Okay, great, thank you.
Can we take a
Yeah, why don't we
brief-
take like 5 minutes?
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
thank
all
you.
right. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes.
better.
Okay.
Mark, are we back on the record? All right, thank you, sir. All right, we are back on the record. City is ready to call its second witness. Sir, you want to raise your right hand? Do you hereby swear affirm under penalty of perjury testimony you're about to give will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Have a seat. Your witness.
Okay, good morning. For the record, can you please just state your full name and spell your last name?
My name is Orion Watts. My last name is spelled W-A-T-T-S.
Hey, push the button.
Oh, which one?
There
There
we
we
go.
go.
All right.
Orion Watts, last name is
Thank
spelled
you.
W-A-T-T-S.
Okay, thank you for repeating that. Are you employed currently?
I am employed by the city of Englewood as an Englewood police officer.
Okay, and how long have you worked there?
16 years.
Okay, and you said, are you a police officer?
Yes, I'm a police officer.
Okay. What are some of your job duties just on a day-to-day basis?
I'm a patrol officer, so I answer calls for service.
Okay, and were you on duty on Wednesday, October 9th, 2024?
I was.
Okay, and where were you working?
I was working as a patrol officer that day and throughout the entire city of Englewood.
All right, and I'd like to draw your attention to approximately 11 o'clock that day, late morning. Do you remember doing anything in particular?
Yes, I was asked to come over here to serve a notice of exclusion and ejection.
Okay, and do you remember who you served that to?
Yes, I did. I served it to Miss Regan Benson.
All right, and I know you gestured, but for the record, do you see Miss Benson here today?
I do.
All right, can you point to where she's sitting?
She's sitting right here at the table.
All right, thank you. Hearing officer, may the record reflect the witness has identified the appealing party, Miss Regan Benson.
So reflect.
All right, so I'm going to move on to the exclusion notice itself you mentioned. So did you serve the notice of exclusion to Miss Benson?
I did.
All right. Are you authorized to serve notices of exclusion?
I am.
All right, and why?
As a police officer, I'm allowed to serve any kind of criminal or civil notices, and this is a civil notice.
Okay, thank you. Have you reviewed the notice of exclusion itself?
Before I served it to her, I just looked barely over, didn't really review it.
Okay, was there any part of the exclusion that you filled out yourself?
Yeah, I just had to fill out the time, date, and signing it myself.
Okay, and then can you just explain on that morning the interaction between you and Miss Benson and how you served her, or how the interaction went?
Yeah, I was asked to come on over here to serve Miss Benson. I was waiting around to see where she was. I saw her walking up toward the court, so I walked over to her and said, Miss Benson, and I had a notice of exclusion and ejection for her and went over it with her then.
All right, and did Miss Benson sign the notice?
She did.
Okay, and did you sign the notice?
I did.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions at this time.
All right, cross-examination.
Good morning, officer. Did you say your first name is Orion?
It sure is.
My nephew's first name is Orion. I've never heard of another person. I think it is the prettiest name.
Not a hugely,
Yeah.
not one that's a lot of people have, but it's pretty cool.
You never see, I mean, it says O. Watts, but I never know police officers' first
Yeah,
names.
yeah.
So, I would like to better understand how you were called to serve this. So, when you got a copy of the notice, was it completely filled out except for where you signed it and date and put the time?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so it had Ms. Benson's address and date of birth already in there?
It already had everything in
Okay.
there.
Do you know who fills that out?
It was filled out, from what I was told, it was filled out by the city attorney.
Okay. How did you get a copy of it?
I was given 2 copies by the acting chief. He gave me 2 copies and asked me to go ahead and go serve it.
Okay. Did he give you any direction about when and where to serve it?
He just said he thinks that Miss Benson would be in the court today, and we know that she's going to be there, so go ahead and just serve it to her there.
Okay. So who gave you that information?
That would be the acting chief, Chief Fender.
Chief.
Fender.
Sorry, these aren't familiar names to
It's
me.
okay.
Okay, so let me say this back to you to make sure that I got it right. You showed up for work, had an encounter with Chief Fender, acting Chief Fender, who gave you the paperwork and told you Ms. Benson is expected to be in the city council chambers today, go serve this on her.
Yes.
Did the chief tell you what Ms. Benson was expected to be in city chambers for?
No.
Did you have any hesitation about coming up and serving Ms. Benson?
No, I didn't.
You've had other interactions with Ms. Benson previous to this?
Yes.
And she's frequently filming you and during those interactions,
Yes.
as she's entitled to do, right?
Yeah, like told her that she was entitled to as well in this interaction as well.
And you're filming her too, often?
I have a body cam that I'm always filming any interaction.
Okay. And on this day, like every other time, you had a respectful exchange with Ms. Benson?
I'm sorry, can you repeat one more time?
You had a respectful exchange with Ms. Benson?
Yes, I was very respectful with her.
And she was asking you questions, but she was respectful to you?
She was asking me questions. She also told me that I got an F for the day.
That didn't feel very good for you, right? You don't want to fail.
Well, nobody ever wants to fail, but I didn't really take it personally.
Right. Okay, so let me see. I was looking at the police report that came out of this. You did a report afterwards. You gave me a business card with a report number on it, right?
Yes.
And the report basically just says you showed up here and served her, right?
Yep.
The reported as, it says disturbance, verbal.
So that's going to be from our dispatch. That's not anything that I can do with it. And a lot of times those are just catch-all. That's all.
So the dispatcher puts in whatever they put in for this section?
Which section would that be exactly?
It's under call for service. It has reported as, and it says disturbance verbal. That's not information you control.
We can control it sometimes, but I don't believe in this case. I think it was just automatically populated.
Okay. Would you say that Ms. Benson, on the day you served her with this notice, was causing a disturbance?
I had very brief interaction with her, so I don't know anything else.
So with your interactions with her, did you observe her to be causing a disturbance?
With her interactions with me, all I can speak on is with just myself, and it was just the interactions just with me and wasn't a huge disturbance, no.
Okay. So if there was a disturbance, it happened sometime where you weren't present?
If there was, I wouldn't have been present.
Were you dispatched to the city council building or to the city building to serve this, or what, that came from your chief?
That came from the chief.
How did you get a dispatch report number then?
I asked for a report number.
And how does that happen?
I just asked for over the radio for a case number.
Okay. And then dispatch assigns the case number 248729?
If that's the one on there, yes.
Okay.
Just for the record, Ms. Hubbard, Exhibit 2 is the notice of exclusion, which is 4 pages. Any report that you're referring to hasn't been admitted into evidence, just FYI.
I only have one copy. I'm happy to admit it, but I only have one copy.
I just want to let you know, I don't have that, so it's not part of the official record. So.
Here, I'll go ahead and.
My only request would be if she asks the witness to testify further with regards to that, I please provide it.
All right, thank you.
We can go ahead and put it in for the record. I'm not sure what letter I'm on, Your Honor. I have a tendency to lose track.
Yeah, I think that's F, so I'll just mark this exhibit F at the top. Thank you. All right, and Mr. Cash, no objection?
No.
Okay, exhibit F is admitted. Thank you.
Just one moment, Your Honor. Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
No redirect.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So do you have any further witnesses?
Oh, no, we do not, hearing officer. The only other thing I was going to bring up before I cede ground to opposing counsel was I would like to admit two pieces of evidence through judicial notice. One is the affidavit that was issued for the arrest warrant that we've already testified to in this case, that was issued based on Ms. Benson's behavior. And then the second is just a register of actions in that criminal case that just, again, shows that she was issued an arrest warrant on because probable cause was found. I have copies I can show opposing counsel as well.
No objection to those court records being made part of the record.
All right, and are those already marked as exhibits?
They are. I think we will be on 4 and 5.
Yeah, 4 and 5, please. All right, noting no objection from Ms. Hubbard, exhibits 4 and 5 are admitted. You can bring those up. Ms. Hubbard, do you have copies of these documents? Okay, all right.
I'm representing Ms. Benson in the criminal case, Your Honor, so I
Oh,
have
okay, just want to make sure.
plenty of copies.
I figured you did, just wanted to make sure. All right, so, let's see, exhibit 4 will be the affidavit for arrest warrant. Exhibit 5 is the register of actions for the court. Both are admitted. All right.
And then nothing else from the city.
Nothing else from the city. All right. Ms. Hubbard, do you wish to call any witnesses?
No.
Let's see, so it's about 18 after. We'll be able, I know you have a hard end. At
I do,
12:30.
Your Honor, although I mean, 12, if I'm out of here by 12:45, I should be fine.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always try to give myself a little.
No, I completely understand. All right, closing argument of the city.
Yeah, just give me one moment here. Hearing officer, as introduced, my name is Nathan Cash and I'm representing the city of Englewood in this matter. On October 7th, 2024, Ms. Benson attended the public comment session of the city of Englewood City Council meeting. At this meeting, she was asked to comply with city policy, refused, but more importantly, continued to interrupt the mayor as he requested for her to stop. Based on the several-minute interruption and the resulting recess, as well as her refusal later on to leave the chambers altogether when she was again asked by the mayor, the notice of exclusion was issued. The city today has the burden to demonstrate by preponderance of the evidence that Ms. Benson committed the rule violations that were specified, also that the issuance, duration, and conditions of the exclusion notice itself are lawful. Through the testimony and evidence that's been presented today, the city has not only met, but has exceeded this burden. I'll begin by speaking about the rule violations themselves. I will then go to the issuance and duration of the exclusion notice, and then speak about the First Amendment concerns that were raised today. So first, Ms. Benson was noted as pursuant to Exhibit 3, the standards of behavior. The exclusion notice specified that she violated the rule of disruptive behavior or activity in a city council meeting. Through testimony you've heard today and the Exhibit 1, the video and evidence, you have heard that Ms. Benson was asked to stop and said the words, "Stop, if you interrupt me, I'm going to keep talking," or something to that effect. She acknowledged that she was being asked to stop speaking by the mayor and did not do so. This in and of itself disrupted the meeting for longer than a public comment period would have lasted, as you can tell by Exhibit 1, between 5 and 10 minutes, and prevented other people who would wish to speak from promptly being able to exercise their First Amendment rights. As you can show, it's more likely than not through the testimony of the city attorney today that and the videos and evidence that is admitted, that Ms. Benson did commit this rule violation. Second, Ms. Benson was noted as violating any applicable criminal law. On the exclusion notice, it is marked in the other category under Tier 1 violations, But as Ms. Niles, the city attorney, testified, a Tier 2 violation is the violation of any applicable criminal law. So this, in effect, was marked as a Tier 1 violation, which is all the city is arguing it was today, but could have been marked as a Tier 2 violation. Specifically, Ms. Benson was marked as having violated CRS 18.9.110, 3 separate provisions. 18.9.110.2, 18.9.110.3, and 18.9.110.4. I will very briefly go through each of these. So CRS 18.9.110.2 states that no person shall, at or in any such public building, willfully impede any public official or employee in the lawful performance of duties or activities through the use of restraint, abduction, coercion, or intimidation, or by force and violence or threat thereof. The evidence and testimony we've heard today shows by preponderance of the evidence that each of these elements was met. It is not contested that this is a public building and that Ms. Benson was at a public meeting. Further, you can tell from the video they had to call a recess due to Ms. Benson's refusal to stop talking despite repeated instructions from the mayor, who is the authorized official in charge of maintaining order at public meetings in the city of Englewood during this time. Further, Ms. Benson willfully impeded this. She knew that she was being asked to stop, and she refused. Regardless of not she was aware of this specific law, she had the required intent that she was acknowledging she was asked to be stopped speaking by the mayor and refused to do so. Further, as you can tell from the video that is exhibited as Exhibit 1, Ms. Benson continued to speak louder and louder, which constitutes intimidation pursuant to the statute. So by preponderance of the evidence, Ms. Benson has been shown to have violated Provision 2. Provision 3 is slightly different. There are many similar elements, so I should be able to discuss this a little bit more quickly. But it states that no person shall willfully refuse or fail to leave any such public building upon being requested to do so by the chief administrative officer or his designee charged with maintaining order in such public building, if the person has committed, is committed, threatens to commit, or incites another to commit any act which did or would, if completed, disrupt, impair, interfere with, or obstruct the lawful missions, processes, procedures, and functions being carried on in the building. Again, I have already explained that Ms. Benson was at a public building that was not contested, and there was a public meeting going on, which does constitute the lawful mission, process, procedure, or function being carried on in the city council chambers. Second, I've demonstrated that she willfully refused to leave. She specifically stated when asked by the mayor to leave, "I will not leave," and then did not leave the building, but walked to the back of the room for about 15 minutes, as you heard from testimony today. Second, while we have established that the city manager is the chief administrative officer, you've heard testimony that he has officially designated the mayor for maintaining order in the city council chambers during public meetings. Further, even if you found today, hearing officer, that Ms. Benson's refusal to listen to the mayor's orders to quit talking did not constitute a disruption, she did say, if you keep interrupting me, I'll keep interrupting you and keep speaking. And that would constitute threatening to continue an act, which if completed would disrupt. There's no indication that Ms. Benson would ever cede the ground or stop talking. She spoke for longer than the 3 minutes that is normally allowed in public comment and was refusing to listen to any directions. Thus, the city has shown by preponderance of the evidence that Ms. Benson has also committed this rule violation as established by the standards of behavior with reference to state statute. Finally, the rule, provision 4 states that no person shall, at any meeting or session conducted by any judicial, legislative, or administrative body, or official at or in any public building, willfully impede, disrupt, or hinder the normal proceedings of such meeting or session by any act of intrusion into the chamber or other areas designated for use of the body or official conducting the meeting or session, or by any act designed to intimidate, coerce, or hinder any member of such body or official engaged in the performance of the duties at such meeting or session. Once again, and I hope the last time I'll have to reiterate this, Ms. Benson was at a public meeting in a public building and refused and threatened to commit behavior and did commit behavior designed to intimidate the mayor by saying that she would not stop interrupting him or listen to his orders as the official authorized maintaining order. Thus, the city again has demonstrated by preponderance of the evidence that Ms. Benson has committed this rule violation. However, hearing officer, any one of these 4 specified rule violations is sufficient to support a 45-day exclusion pursuant to the city policies as referenced in the standards of behavior. Thus, even if you find that Ms. Benson only, by preponderance of evidence, we've shown that she's committed one of these 4 violations, that is enough to support her exclusion in this regard. Now I'm going to move on to speak about the issuance and duration of the exclusion notice. So the city code, specifically the Englewood Municipal Code 1143F, specifies when an exclusion notice is properly issued. It states, among other things, it states that an exclusion notice must be in writing, signed by an authorized official, and include the date of issuance, the term not exceeding 90 days, subject to certain exceptions which do not apply here, the location of the exclusion, a mention of an allowance to enter as necessary to conduct legitimate city business, identification of a specific rule violated, a brief statement of credible evidence of the rule violation, a notification of the right and process to appeal the exclusion, and a notice of the consequences for failure to comply with the exclusion. As you can see, hearing officer, with reference to Exhibit 2, which is the exclusion notice that Ms. Benson was issued, it is clearly in writing. It was signed by Officer Orion Watts, who testified that he is an authorized official as a police officer, which the city code specifically enumerates does qualify as an authorized official. Further, the exclusion notice does include the date of its issuance, the term, which is 45 days, the location, which is specifically the second floor of the Civic Center building in the City Council chambers. It does provide an exception, as you heard testimony from Ms. Niles, and is evident from a review of the evidence that allows Ms. Benson to enter as necessary to conduct legitimate city business. Further, it identifies not 1, but 4 specific rules that were violated, has, well, maybe not brief, a statement of the credible evidence against Ms. Benson, and also has a page notifying Ms. Benson of the right and process to appeal, which she has done today. And further, the notice itself states that a failure to comply with exclusion may result in a trespass violation. Thus, the city has demonstrated the issuance and duration of the exclusion notice by preponderance of the evidence is lawful. Now I'd like to turn to what is perhaps the most stickiest issue, the most hotly contested issue today, hearing officer, which is the First Amendment implications of excluding an individual from city council chambers. I would just like to note that in public forums, content-neutral regulations on speech are permissible when they, as follows, restrict only the time, manner, and place of speech, are narrowly tailored to serve a significant government interest, and leave open ample alternative channels of communication. Now, the 10th Circuit has not decided, and specifically has stated that they have not decided, whether or not a city council chamber during a public meeting is a designated public forum or a limited public forum. The standards for a limited public forum would be a lower standard of proof than the standard I've just laid out, but since it is unclear, I'll proceed with the evaluation assuming that this is a designated public forum. So first, the content of Ms. Benson's speech is not being regulated. She's still allowed to virtually attend city council meetings and deliver public comment on any issue that she's allowed unless it violates, the law or some other procedure. But she's allowed to continue her homelessness advocacy, continue to be combative, to call out council members, and is not in and of herself barred from using profane language either. This restricts not even the time and manner of her speech, and she is still able to deliver her testimony remotely, but only the place of her speech. She must deliver her testimony for the next 45 days virtually, rather than appearing here in the council meeting. Thus, the exclusion complies with the First Amendment in that regard. Second, this exclusion notice is extraordinarily narrowly tailored to serve the significant government interest of preventing disruptions to its public meetings, which the 10th Circuit has indicated is a legitimate significant government interest. like I said, she's not even necessarily physically excluded from this premise if it is found that it is necessary to serve some sort of official business. And otherwise, she's still able to virtually deliver testimony. Further, she is not excluded from the entire Civic Center building, which also includes the library and other facilities, but only the exact place where she has demonstrated she is engaged in disruptive behavior. And as I've stated probably ad nauseum at this point, hearing officer, there are ample alternative channels of communication through her ability to testify in all, or to present public comment in an alternative meeting. So in conclusion, hearing officer, the city has met its burden today, showing by a preponderance of evidence that Ms. Benson committed all 4 of the rule violations, even though only 1 is necessary to support her exclusion. Second, I'd like to note that she was not excluded for a violation of the city policy, but for her disruption. And that is indicated by testimony from Ms. Niles, as well as on the exclusion notice and standards of behavior itself. Further, hearing officer, even if you found that there was an issue with exclusion notice or some sort of First Amendment concern, the remedy in the situation would not be to reverse the exclusion notice. Pursuant to the City of Englewood's municipal code, you have the authority to modify the exclusion notice to bring it into compliance with law. So to the extent that you find we did not meet our burden, which we believe very strongly that we did, this would be the form of relief provided to Ms. Benson. Thank you.
Ms. Hibbert.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to start with the first prong, whether they met their burden to show a policy violation. And I'm going to start with the criminal code statute. They allege there's 3 violations. This is not the venue to determine whether 18.9.110 has been violated. Ms. Benson is being prosecuted by a district attorney in a criminal courtroom in a county court in this judicial district, who will decide, a jury will decide, whether Ms. Benson has violated those statutes. That case is still ongoing. If she is ultimately found guilty of those violations, the city can, using that conviction, come back here and seek an exclusion of her. Unless and until that happens, Regan Benson is presumed innocent of having violated those statutes. This is not the forum to determine whether there's been a violation of a Title 18 statute. And with all due respect, you are not the appropriate decision maker for that question. Even a county court judge appointed by Governor Polis does not have the authority to make that decision. That is decided by a jury. I can walk through each of the alleged violations of Section 110 if you feel that would be helpful. I think as a matter of law, the city has not met its burden because they have not presented any evidence that a court of competent jurisdiction has found Ms. Benson violated any provision of Title 18. Moving on to the other alleged violation, this disruptive behavior. We have to keep in mind that the City of Englewood standards can only be applied within the lens of the First Amendment. They cannot just forbid someone for yelling when they are passionately expressing an opinion to government officials. The First Amendment is kind of the umbrella that covers all, and only to the extent something falls outside of the bounds of the First Amendment is the city allowed to punish it. But down on a more technical level, in this case, what we have is, I got a little bit confused during the hearing about what exactly the supposedly disruptive conduct was. But I believe what it comes down to is that Ms. Benson didn't stop talking when the mayor was trying to talk. So to and I know the hearing officer has the video and can go back and watch it, so I'm just going to give you my overlay of what I believe it shows. Ms. Benson is called to the podium. The mayor recognizes her by saying, "Ms. Benson, please state your address and cross streets." We watched other examples of videos that this is the mayor's process. He recognizes people, he says, "Please state your name, address, cross streets." We watched a video of one woman say she's in District 1 and that's good enough, and she is allowed to continue talking and give her public comment. We watched a video of Ms. Benson just ignoring what the presiding officer had said regarding your address and cross street, and she was allowed to continue her public comment. There isn't a back and forth as much as the city attorney would like there to be, or would like the record to be different. The way that this works in the city of Englewood public comment time is not that the mayor formally says, "And now you may proceed." The videos that have been admitted to evidence show that what the mayor does is he says, "Please give your name and cross streets," and the person begins talking. And significantly, when the person begins talking, this light turns green. Now, I understand the city attorney may not pay much attention to whether the light on top of the podium turns green, but the speakers do. The speakers know that when the light turns green, their 3 minutes have started. The speakers know that when the light turns yellow, that they're running out of time. And the speakers know that when the light turns red, they're done. And you can see in the videos that we've admitted into evidence that that's what the speakers rely on, right? The clock is facing city council, can't be seen by the speakers. This red, yellow, red, orange, green light is what indicates to the speaker, "I'm good to go." The city attorney testified before we started talking about Ms. Benson. The city attorney testified that essentially the process is the mayor calls someone up, it tells them to give their name and address, and then the clock starts, the light turns green, they get their 3 minutes. City council is not to interrupt them. The process is that city council is not to interrupt the speaker. Instead, if city council has questions after the speaker is done, they get an opportunity to ask questions after the person has had their 3 minutes. Then there's a back and forth that can go on as long as city council wants it to, because city council at that point is asking questions. But during the 3 minutes, that is the speaker's time. People have the right to come lobby their public officials, and if the city of Englewood wants to say you get 3 minutes, that's their 3 minutes. They can say whatever they want. City attorney testified. They can say whatever they want. We don't regulate the content of their speech as long as they're not threatening someone. Once this light turns green, speaker, you have the floor and you've got 3 minutes. That is the message that is conveyed by the Englewood city government, by the mayor, and by the Englewood City Council to all the members of the public. And when Regan Benson came in to give her city comment on the day in question, that is what she understood to be the truth, because that is what has always happened to her. And on this day, she approached the podium. The mayor says, "Give your name and cross streets or city of residence." And as she has done before, she did not. She just began speaking. And significantly, the light turned green. It signaled to her, "Ms. Benson, these are your 3 minutes." And Your Honor, that is what she says on the recording. "This is my time. I'm going to talk for my 3 minutes." And the city is arguing that Ms. Benson was interrupting the mayor. Your Honor, that's not what was happening. The light had turned green. Ms. Benson was on her 3 minutes, and the mayor was interrupting her.
She doesn't have to yield to him during her 3 minutes. You heard the city attorney testify that she has never seen anyone other than Regan Benson interrupted during their 3 minutes. Regan Benson was recognized to speak, she was authorized to speak, and she got her 3 minutes. She was entitled to her 3 minutes. The city council decided not to listen to her that day. A minute into her comments, one of the city council members asks for a break, suggests they take a break, as they do many times every city council meeting, and 4 of the city council members leave of their own choosing. No one said their safety was at risk. No one said Ms. Benson was a threat to do anything but keep talking for the 3 minutes she's entitled to talk. They chose to leave. Ms. Benson did not cause the disruption of the meeting. They chose to leave during her public comment period. The city attorney testified it wasn't the tone of Ms. Benson's voice. It wasn't how loud she was. None of those things are uncommon. It was that she wouldn't stop talking when the mayor was interrupting her during her 3 minutes. She did not have to stop talking. It was her time. The city of Englewood does not get to silence Regan Benson because they don't like what she has to say. They're trying really hard to do that. They've tried to have her prosecuted more than once. This is my second time appearing here for an exclusion hearing. I'm sure it won't be my last, because they are on a mission to shut her up because she advocates for people they don't want to have to deal with. And that is exactly why this hearing matters, and that's exactly why we have the First Amendment. The city attorney also testified she can't remember anyone other than Regan Benson ever being made to stop talking when they didn't give their address or cross streets. First Amendment is not simply time, place, and manner restrictions. When you are going to have what you consider a content-neutral time, place, and manner restriction, it has to be applied in a non-discriminatory and non-retaliatory way. The city of Englewood is targeting Ms. Benson. That was very clear from the testimony today. It's very clear from the history of events. They are applying these standards to her in a way that they are not applying them to anyone else. And they are doing it in retaliation for her exercising her First Amendment rights. Ms. Benson gives public comment. She also records all around this government building. Those are both recognized, long-held, well-established First Amendment protected activities. And when you retaliate against someone because of their First Amendment activities, that in and of itself is a violation of the First Amendment. And that's what we have here today. We have the city of Englewood doesn't like what she has to say. They're trying to hide behind, we're making a content-neutral time, place, and manner restriction, but they're making one that only applies to her. That violates the First Amendment. There was no disruptive activity by my client. My client approached the podium, was recognized by the mayor, started speaking, and continued speaking, and after 1 minute, city council chose to leave. That is not a disruption caused by Regan Benson. The city has not met its burden of proving a violation of the city standards. The city has not met its burden of proving a violation of Title 18 because this is the wrong venue. There is no proof that the appropriate court of competent jurisdiction has found any such violation. they have failed to meet their burden on the first prong. Even if for some reason the hearing officer believes they have satisfied that burden, entering this order would not be lawful. I'm not contesting the duration of it, although I think it violates the First Amendment. I'm not contesting the conditions, contesting the entry of the order. You cannot, as a matter of law, enforce a regulation that against one person who you don't like what they have to say because they're loud and because they make their message really well known and because their First Amendment activity, their videos, their comments, their viewpoints cause you a headache. Because you know what happens when Regan Benson makes a video? More people come. And more people stand up here, and more people tell the city council members, you need to do something to protect the most vulnerable citizens in our society. That's what happens when Regan Benson comes. That's what happens when Regan Benson makes videos. And that's what the city of Englewood wants to stop. And this hearing, this exclusion cannot be a tool available to them. Entering an exclusion notice that keeps Regan Benson from attending city council meetings where she comes and makes her videos, where she comes and makes herself heard, that in and of itself violates the First Amendment. Entering this exclusion order would be unlawful. And if there's no other questions from the hearing officer, I have nothing more today.
Thank you. Any brief rebuttal?
No, hearing officer.
All right. All right. I'm going to close the hearing. Ms. Hubbard, why don't you prepare, prepare the flash drive, removing those videos that have not been admitted. Mr. Cash, do you have a flash drive with Exhibit 1? Yeah, go ahead.
And this is actually the city's flash drive, so I'm gonna give it to the IT person. He may want to copy it onto a different one to give to you.
Oh, well, that's fine.
But I just want to make sure that it only has what has been admitted.
No,
when I do
absolutely. Thank you. I have a question, Ms. Hubbard, while you're doing that. So section 1143 of the municipal code, let's see, provides at 4F, within 3 days after conclusion of the hearing, written decision shall be issued. And I haven't taken time to look in the municipal code. Many times with state and city law.
We would have no objection to a longer period if that's what you would.
Well, I just don't know if that starts from today because of the weekend, if that starts Monday. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
A deadline's a deadline, and I'll do what I need to do on them, so.
To my knowledge, the city code's ambiguous. The last exclusion hearing, at least I've been in, the hearing officer, I think, took 4 days from the date of the hearing, so it was more like 3 business days.
Okay.
But again, we wouldn't object if.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to give this to the IT.
That'd be great. Okay, thank you. All right, and we have one more here, 2 more hearings. We're going to take a brief recess.
All right, and let me, I'll locate that USB drive.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Thank you, hearing officer. I'm just going to remove another exhibit we didn't use today.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, yep, yep.
He said you can have.